I'm calling the October 19th City Council meeting to order. Before we move on to tonight's agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting in a remote meeting format. On March 6th, I issued an emergency proclamation declaring a civil emergency in the city due to the COVID-19 outbreak. On March 24th, the governor issued Proclamation 20-28, prohibiting meetings that fall under the Open Public Meetings Act, such as our city council meetings, from being conducted in person. The prohibition has been extended through November 9th, so tonight's meeting will be held entirely remotely. The meeting will be recorded, streamed live, and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. And a call-in number has been provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting or to make comments. For those members of the public on the call, welcome. For those of you who submitted the online form to make comments, your name will be called under the audience comment portion of the meeting. And if there's anyone on the call who did not sign up but would like to make comments tonight, please press *3 on your phone and we will add you to our speakers list. So at this point, I'd like to take a moment and do a roll call for council members in attendance. So please say hi when I call your name. Councilmember DeMichelle.
Here.
Councilmember Goodman.
Here.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Council President Hunt.
Here.
Thank you. And Councilmember Martz has an excused absence this evening. Deputy Council President Ray.
Here.
And Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Thank you all. We have 6 of our 7 council members in attendance this evening. There are also various city staff that are joining us. City Administrator Wally Bobkowitz, Deputy City Administrator Andrea Snyder, Finance Director Beth Goldberg, Economic Development Manager Jen Davis-Hayes, Sustainability Coordinator Megan Curtis-Murphy, Management Analyst Jean Paul, and our City Attorney Jim Haney, as well as our Deputy City Clerk Tisha Geezer. There may also be some other city staff in attendance. Others that are presenting or on hand for questions this evening is Ann Fletcher from People for Climate Action. Welcome, Ann. Lindsay Frickle from the Issaquah Alps Trail Club. Hello, Lindsay. Nice to see you. Beth Javins with Visit Issaquah. Glad to have you here. And Martin Cha and Matthew Hudson, consultants with the FCS Group. So welcome to all of you. I'm going to take a moment now to reiterate some meeting guidelines. Please remember to speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before you are speaking. Mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And for members of the public, if you are also streaming the live video feed, please turn the sound off as there is a delay. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask everyone to keep your microphones muted, but to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is audience comments. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak or indicated a desire to speak this evening? Yes. I will read some guidelines then. For those making comments, please make sure to direct your comments to the whole council and not to individuals. And while this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When you are recognized, please unmute your microphone, state your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. When you are done, please remute your microphone. And if you do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will still need to proceed, and you are encouraged to rejoin us at the meeting if you are able. There are also 2 public hearings this evening, AB 7990, which is the proposed 2021 budget, levy and revenue sources, and AB 7991, the proposed 2021 budget and salary ordinance. If you would like to make comments on these topics, you will have an opportunity later in the meeting. And again, for those who have joined us tonight and would like to speak under audience comments but did not sign up in advance, please press *3 on your phone. We will call the last 2 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to make comments. Personal attacks, obscene language, and derogatory remarks and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. And if a speaker is out of order, I will ask them to stop and mute their microphone. If a speaker does not comply, I may direct staff to have the microphone muted. If a disruption to the meeting occurs and order cannot be restored, I may direct staff to remove you from the call. Citizens' comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process. The city takes your comments very seriously, and we thank you for taking the time to address us. City Clerk, can you please identify the first person who signed up to speak tonight?
Yes, the first speaker is Deepa Sivarajan. I'll be requesting you to unmute Deepa. Deepa, I'm going to request you to unmute one more time. You may need to press *6 on your phone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. Thank you for the opportunity to give comment tonight. My name is Deepa Sivarajan, and I'm the Washington Policy Manager for Climate Solutions, which is a local nonprofit working to accelerate clean energy solutions to the climate crisis. Climate Solutions had the opportunity to participate in the climate convening in July, and we're very pleased to see that the recommendations from that event are being shared tonight. I wanted to share some suggestions for how the city can move forward after these recommendations to take action on reducing Issaquah's greenhouse gas emissions. Firstly, I want to urge Council to not let process get in the way of progress and to take action on climate in parallel to other planning efforts that are happening at the city. We're really excited to see the formation of the Environmental Board, which will be able to focus on climate and sustainability issues. And I believe that the convening recommendations include the development of a climate action plan for the city. We strongly support a robust plan, but we urge Council to not let these planning efforts preclude other policy actions that can be taken in the near term. We also encourage the city to take these actions in close consultation with vulnerable communities, such as Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, and low-income communities, to ensure that these plans are implemented equitably. In terms of policy, we believe that the most impact can be made in the near term in the transportation and buildings sectors. Transportation is Washington's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and it is also responsible for other toxic air pollution that damages our health. We're pleased to see that the convening recommendations include passing the Mobility Master Plan, which works to both reduce vehicle miles traveled and to electrify vehicles. Both of these strategies are needed to decarbonize, and they are complementary of each other. Recent climate solutions research concluded that a combination of these two strategies is likely to reduce personal transportation costs by over $4,000 per year by 2050, including yielding as much as $600 million in annual health savings across Washington and Oregon. Residents should have the option to safely and conveniently get around without a personal vehicle, and all remaining vehicle travel, including personal, transit, and freight, will need to be electrified to meet the city's emissions reduction goals. A simple way for Issaquah to support vehicle electrification would be to pass an EV readiness policy. Buildings of all types to provide parking should be covered by this requirement. While existing state law covers some multifamily and commercial buildings, Issaquah can and should go beyond this minimum requirement. This low-cost policy is strategic to ensure that new construction including parking, accommodates future EV charging without the need for expensive retrofits. Access to convenient charging is a major concern when people consider buying an EV, and the majority of EV charging is done at home. Seattle has already passed such an ordinance, and King County is considering one currently that would cover unincorporated parts of the county. So given that neighboring jurisdictions are already acting, it makes sense for Issaquah to do the same to ensure that new development is future-proofed. Moving on from transportation, I also want to reiterate the importance of reducing the use of fossil fuels in the buildings sector. The use of natural gas to heat and power buildings currently accounts for 15% of King County's total greenhouse gas emissions, and residential energy emissions have grown in King County since 2008, which is largely attributed to increases in natural gas use. Combusting fossil fuels in buildings also increases outdoor and indoor air pollution. Living in a home with gas cooking increases a child's chance of developing asthma by 42% and certain outdoor air pollutants emitted from buildings exceed those from power plants in Washington. These impacts tend to be disproportionately felt by vulnerable communities. Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and Asian people, as well as people with lower socioeconomic status, have higher risks of death from air pollution, in part due to the historical impacts of segregation and redlining that have led communities of color to be pushed to live in places with greater exposure to air pollution. We were really encouraged to see that many different participants at the climate convening supported all-electric clean buildings. And to that end, we strongly encourage that Issaquah move towards supporting all-electric buildings for any new construction in the city. In 2019, Washingtonians spent an extra $67 million building homes with gas. A very recent study by the Rocky Mountain Institute found that in Seattle, a new home that uses gas for space heating, water heating, air conditioning, and cooking has a higher upfront cost of $4,500 more than an all-electric home, which uses the heat pump system for both heating and cooling. We can expect similar numbers in cities like Issaquah, depending on the utility serving the area. Requiring clean new buildings will not only protect residents from the health and safety impacts of gas, but will also prevent an unnecessary expansion of gas infrastructure that poses a risk of stranded assets in the future, given that new buildings constructed with natural gas infrastructure will last for over 50 years. On the other hand, if new buildings continue to be built with gas infrastructure, it will be the low-income residents who will bear the highest burden of cost in the future for rising gas prices and retrofit conversion to all-electric buildings. I hope that you will consider implementing these actions on transportation and building mitigation in the near future so that Issaquah can continue working to a cleaner, more just future. Thank you for your time and for all your hard work in protecting the residents of Issaquah.
Thank you, Deepa. I just want to let the public know as well, as we go down through our list of public speakers this evening, there may be a slight delay in the timing between when the speaker is unmuted and they actually start to speak. So just so everybody is aware. City Clerk, next on the list.
Yes, next we have Corey Walters. Corey, I'll send the request to unmute you now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, this is Corey Walters. I'm the Executive Director of the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank, and I am calling in tonight to thank our community and thank the City of Issaquah for an upcoming event. We have the Mayor's Day of Concern on Halloween, so October 31st, and the Mayor's Day of Concern is a kickoff of our food drive season, and I just want to thank everybody in advance. We'll have 2 drop-off locations, one in Issaquah at Our Savior Lutheran Church and one in Sammamish at Central Washington University. As many of you know, the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank has not been able to receive food in its typical traditional ways because of COVID-19. So food drives like the Mayor's Day of Concern are very important to our organization and our community. It's super important to ensure that we are getting enough food for our community members. And just a little data from March to April this year, so the first 6 months of COVID, we provided 7,262 services to Issaquah residents, and that included residents who drove through and picked up food and resources from the food bank, and residents who we were able to deliver food to through our Groceries to Go program and our emergency delivery program that we started when COVID started. So I just would really like to thank Mary Lou and the council and City of Issaquah and our community members for stepping up during this time period and making our work at the food bank a lot easier and allowing us to serve the growing need. So thank you so much. And Mary Lou, thanks for supporting the Mayor's Day of Concern.
Thank you, Ms. Walters. It sounds like if it's on the 31st, there might be a costume expectation, which could be tough. City Clerk, is there anyone else signed up to speak today?
Yes, our next speaker is Kathy McCory. Kathy, I'll send the request to unmute now. And Kathy, I'm going to send that request one more time. Kathy, I still see you're muted. You should be able to press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. And I see that you're unmuted now. Kathy, can you hear us? Mayor, I'm not certain of the problem, but we don't seem to be able to hear Kathy.
That's super unfortunate because she did do the test as well. Well, hopefully Kathy can call back in and we can try again. Is there another speaker on your list this evening?
We don't have any more speakers on the list, but I do see we have a number of phone-in callers. If anyone else is interested in making comments, if you can please press *3 on your phone to raise your hand. That's *3.
So we'll take a minute or so to make sure anybody that is here this evening wishing to speak under audience comment can let you know.
And I'm going to, oh yeah, Kathy came off the line. Okay, I do see one hand raised. Phone-in caller with the last 2 digits, 14. I'll send a request to unmute you now. And one more time, phone-in caller with the last 2 digits, 14. I'm going to request you unmute now. Phone-in caller with the last 2 digits, 14. Can you please try pressing *6 on your phone to unmute?
Hi, this is Steve Pereira, living in Old Town Issaquah for about 13 years. Can you hear me okay?
Thank you, Steve. We can hear you really well. Thanks very much.
Sure, thanks. So I had 2 pieces of input that I wanted to provide tonight. The first was reflecting back on the last City Council meeting. One of the issues that came up was a proposed tax increase by King County to pay for service needs for low-income housing, that type of thing. I forget the breadth, but I had 2 pieces of, I guess my thought on that was, I initially liked the idea, and I thought it was a good idea, and I still think it's probably still a good idea. What I kind of disliked was hearing that perception that a lot of the City Council members were approaching the idea from the perspective of we're already going to earmark that towards the transit-oriented development project for low-income housing, already earmarking and already decided that's the best use of the funds, and that kind of concerned me and bothered me, that perception. It wasn't that we're going to see if that was the best need, or it was already most putting the decision ahead of the line that we've already decided to do that and earmarking for that. So the way that came down, or the way that happened, bothered me. It bothered me a little bit less. I know that I've heard City Council talk about taking an input or perspective to offer input to other bodies that have thought about raising taxes, and maybe that would have been a good discussion to have on whether or not this should go forward as well. I didn't hear that discussion happen, so I just wanted to provide those 2 pieces of input on that particular legislation. Just that I was kind of bothered by the way it happened, the way it went down, that it almost seemed to be a decision after the fact for earmarking the best use of those funds. The second piece of input I wanted to provide tonight was on the lodging, or the LTAC, I think, Lodging Tax Authorizing Committee or something to that effect. I guess in part I'm kind of bothered with the whole concept of LTAC, in that I know that previously in the previous LTAC meeting a decision had been made not to provide funding for the Village Theater, and so I'm kind of bothered. I would like to see maybe the city better decide how to use those funds and not have a separate body that decides how to use those funds to better reflect what maybe the needs of or the desires of the community are. I know I would also like to see an increased amount of funds used to support the Cougar Mountain Zoological Society. I think both them and Village Theater are a large draw to Issaquah, so I'd like to see more funds earmarked for that, but I don't see the LTAC body deciding to do either, and I think that's a shame, and I would like to express the opinion that maybe LTAC isn't getting us what we need or best use of those funds. I would support, with that in mind, I guess I know there's earmarked for some $52,000 worth of funds. It looks like maybe in funding or additional funding. I definitely support most of those. I would almost like to see the Chamber of Commerce not receive the funding, in that when I see signs go up, I would almost like to see, instead of presented by this Chamber of Commerce, presented by the City of Issaquah or presented by the residents of Issaquah. I just want to make sure that we're getting the bang for the buck. That's my input for tonight. Thank you all for the good work, and please keep it up. Bye.
Thank you, Steve. Going to check back with City Clerk to see if Kathy McCrory was able to get back on the line.
Yes, she is. If I could ask Steve, if you could please press *3 on your phone to lower your hand. I'm going to check in with Kathy, and then we do have one more member of the public who's indicated a desire to speak. So Kathy, I'm going to send a request for you to unmute now. And one more time, Kathy, I'll be sending you a request to unmute. Please press *6 when you hear the voice on your line.
That looks good. Kathy, are you able to talk with us this evening? Well, that's unfortunate. I can see that mute is off, but we still can't hear her.
Yes, I'm going to keep her line open, and we'll move up to the phone and caller with the last 2 digits, 28. I'll request you unmute now. And one more time, caller with the last 2 digits, 28. I'm requesting you unmute now.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, good. Hi, I'm Danny, and I'm a student at Issaquah High School. And I would just like to speak in strong support of all of the recommendations from the climate convening. Specifically number 5, I think education is obviously critical to environmental justice, but it's also really important in encouraging youth involvement, which is of particular, it's one of my particular passions, and I would implore the city to offer youth opportunities in city projects. I know that is a really cool part of the environmental board, that there's some youth positions, which is awesome, because I think it's really important that youth get involved in these kinds of things. I know there's so many of us who are just super passionate about the environment and really want to do something, and are confused on how exactly to take action. So I really love what the city is doing, and I appreciate the support of Councilwoman DeMichelle in particular on a food waste project I'm working on with Nana Shankar. So thank you so much. And yeah, just thank you for everything you guys are doing, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Danny. City Clerk, should we go back to Ms. McCrory again and see if we can get her comments?
Yes, real quick, Danny, if you could please lower your hand by pressing *3. Thank you. And I've left Kathy's line open. Kathy, can you try talking with us?
Yes, hopefully you can hear me now.
Finally, yes. Ms. McCrory, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good evening, members of the City Council and Mayor Polly. I apologize for my technical issues. My name is Kathy McCory. I'm the CEO of the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce. We're located at 155 Northwestern Gilman Boulevard. And on behalf of the Chamber, we would like to comment on AB 8028, 29, and 30 before you this evening. Regarding AB 8028, the Chamber would like to thank City staff for doing all of the research regarding fees of nearby communities regarding permits. If our local developers find the increases accessible, we certainly do not disagree. We would like to share a quick thought, however. It's our hope that these fees will not adversely affect affordable housing in the future, or that these fees will be adjusted when affordable housing opportunities present themselves. We also would hope that projects currently under review or submitted before the end of the year will receive current rates, since it is more likely that these are the fees on which they are basing their project costs. Regarding Agenda Bills 8029 and 8030, both of these agenda bills seek City Council approval this evening. AB 8029 to review and approve the funding allocation recommendation from Lodging Tax Advisory Council to provide $52,075 from the Lodging Tax Fund reserved to support businesses and nonprofits, and AB 8030 to award the 2021 selection and funding allocation for promotion and visitor attraction services as recommended by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. The Greater Issaquah Chamber would like to thank LTAC and the City of Issaquah for the opportunity to apply for both the funding services and the service contract. Chamber Visitor Center Information Center not only staffs it, but maintains a website, a community calendar, a Facebook page that shares activities, events, and tourism-related businesses. We create and distribute the visitor guide, the official Issaquah road map, a restaurant guide, lodging guide, camping and RV guide, a things to do website and guide, visitor information packages, an event welcome kit in a box for events, hopefully they'll return someday, and a new resident package. All of these take time and money to produce, maintain, promote, and distribute. There are not many opportunities for nonprofits like ours to receive funding, and we thank LTAC for thinking of how to support organizations like ours, and we thank the City Council for your considerations this evening. Regarding 8030 specifically, even though we are not the organization of choice by LTAC, we want to reiterate all the services I just mentioned here this evening. The Chamber continues to provide for the City, Visit Issaquah, and the entire community. There are many ways to promote tourism and market Issaquah, and we are one of many. We would like to remind City Council that we provide these tools for all businesses of Issaquah, regardless of their membership. And if the City and LTAC believe an additional agency is needed to promote tourism, rest assured our guides, sites, tools, and services are available to everyone. After all, our mission at the Greater Issaquah Chamber is to be the catalyst for growth, the convener of leaders, and the champion for the business community. As always, I would like to thank you for all of your hard work, the time you dedicate to serving our community, and for your thoughtful consideration on the issues that come before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm glad that we got the audio stuff figured out. City Clerk, is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening?
No.
So I would like to thank all of those that participated in audience comments today. There were speakers in favor of city action on the findings from the climate convening, support for the Mayor's Day of Concern on October 31st, supporting the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. Multiple comments on the two agenda bills we have this evening dealing with recommendations from the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and also a resident expressing concerns over King County's 0.1% sales tax to support low-income housing. So thank you all for attending. We appreciate that you spend your time, your evening with us. As a reminder, written comments can also be submitted at any time to citycouncil@issaquahwa.gov. And any comments that have been received this evening on tonight's agenda topics will be acknowledged by the Council President Hunt, under the relevant agenda item. So the next item of business this evening is committee and regional reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. This is Councilmember Zach Hall. Just a couple quick reports this evening. Nothing new to report for Cascade Water Alliance. I'll just announce that the next meeting of the Board of Directors is Wednesday, October 28th. For the King County Affordable Housing Committee of the Growth Management Planning Council, I mentioned at our last regular meeting on October 5 that the committee is currently working on developing a list of shared principles to guide county, city, business, and nonprofit efforts to implement new and/or untapped revenue sources for affordable housing. And I also shared that earlier this month that the Sound Cities Association caucus had a number of concerns with that with the first draft. And I was actually just made aware earlier today that we should be seeing a new draft by the end of the week. So I just wanted to give everyone on council a heads up that as soon as I get that, I'll be asking for your feedback. We didn't want to move forward as a caucus until we ran the committee's draft by our councils. So just a heads up that that will be coming to you. And our next committee meeting is Tuesday, November 3rd. For EFR, I'll let Councilmember Goodman or Deputy Council President Ray give that report. And that concludes my report this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember DiMichele.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. I have no report tonight. I will be meeting with Eastside Transportation Partnership tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. This is Councilmember Walsh. I met with the Issaquah Chamber of Commerce on Friday and just continue to keep them up to date about what is going on with our budget. In particular, the items that were important for them to note was the permit fees. And so they know that's on our agenda tonight. And I think we've received some emails about it since then. And just generally keeping them apprised of what's going on in this crazy world that we live in 2020 Issaquah. But nothing other than that was notable. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Walsh. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. Councilmember Goodman here. Since we last met, Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors met, and there were two items on the agenda for regular business. One was the budget, the proposed budget, which the board approved. And then the second item was the new entity type formation, which the board recommended approval of, and that will be coming back to our council as well as all the other voting bodies for all the other members for final approval. And then Lodging Tax Advisory Committee met on Wednesday. And the two topics, both of the topics that we discussed are on our agenda tonight. So those will be fully covered later. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder, Councilmember Mertz has an excused absence this evening and will be going to Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. This is Chris Ray. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Council President Hunt.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. The King Conservation District Advisory Committee met on October 13th at 10 a.m. King Conservation District is a public agency that assists landowners and communities in protecting and enhancing their natural resource, and they serve communities throughout King County. This was the first meeting of this committee this year, and we discussed what we want to do as a committee to support KCD for the rest of this year and into 2021. In particular, we discussed one thing that the advisory committee would like to work on is have a role in the process of hiring a new executive director for KCD. They are undergoing a leadership change and currently have an interim director. I also spoke to our recent discussions about the wildfire preparedness, which is one of the services that they provide, and wanting more information on that, and as well as food insecurity, because one of the other services they provide is assistance with community garden and urban gardening. The next meeting of this committee is not yet set. The Issaquah School District and the City of Issaquah leadership will meet on October 21st. This is part of a recurring meeting schedule between the leadership of the Issaquah School District School Board as well as City Council leadership. And I will report back after that meeting with a synopsis of our discussion. And then lastly, the Title 18 Ad Hoc Committee met on October 15th, and we discussed the outcomes table that we brought to Council on October 13th. We made some changes based on the feedback we received at the meeting, as well as subsequent feedback that we received from council members on that outcomes chart. And we will also be meeting again later this week to begin discussing the deliverables, services, and scope of external work that is in the current proposed budget for this next year for the Title 18 work. And Title 18 is the land use code for the City of Issaquah, and we are currently undergoing a big revision of that. So that's what this ad hoc discusses. And that is the end of my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Hunt. The next item on the agenda this evening is the mayor's report. There was an executive session held earlier this evening to discuss collective bargaining for RCW 42.30.140(4)(a), and no action is anticipated to fall in this evening's session, open session. I also want to make an Affordable Housing Week proclamation tonight. Whereas all people should have access to safe, healthy, and affordable homes within communities that provide opportunity, and whereas the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines affordable housing as housing on which the occupant is paying no more than 30% of gross income for housing costs, including utilities, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many existing financial constraints for low and moderate income households, and whereas housing stability and staying socially distant from those outside of our household has become our state's core public health strategy, and whereas everyone benefits from affordable housing, including the people who reside in these properties, your neighbors, businesses, employers, and the community as a whole. Now, therefore, I, Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim October 12th through 16th, 2020 to be Affordable Housing Week in the City of Issaquah. I have another proclamation to do. It's on the topic that Ms. Walters brought up earlier. It's the Mayor's Day of Concern proclamation. Whereas our King County cities recognize adequate nutrition as a basic goal for each community member, and whereas food insecurity when individuals or households lack reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food, and whereas with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the implementation of strategies to slow the spread of COVID-19 in the community that have led to businesses and school closures, food insecurity has increased in King County. And whereas food insufficiency has almost doubled after implementation of strategies to slow the spread of COVID-19, and whereas food banks, emergency and hot meal programs working within our cities, local churches, social service agencies, and hundreds of volunteers are striving day in and day out to stem the rising needs. However, still more help is needed. And now, therefore, I, Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim October 31st, 2020 to be the Mayor's Day of Concern in the City of Issaquah. And I strongly urge all residents to join the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank and other area food banks to share what they can to nourish those who are food insecure. A couple of little announcements to add on to. First one is about a farmer's market grant from the King County CARES Act funding, and tonight's consent agenda does include a $10,000 grant award for the Issaquah Farmers Market. King County Council has allocated $410,000 of its CARES Act allocation to assist King County area farmers markets in their compliance work related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the delivery of farmers markets this spring and summer. This reimbursement amount was targeted to be between $10,000 and $15,000, depending on how many markets apply with qualifying expenses. And eligible expenses included increased personnel costs and new operational costs due to COVID-19 and the modified protocols. Issaquah offered a modified and safe version of its successful and popular farmers market this season. This was done in close collaboration with King County Public Health in following their guidelines related to vendors, customers, and the event location. The Issaquah market averaged over 2,000 visitors each Saturday. Like all federal CARES Act funding, this grant must be distributed and expended by December 31st, 2020. As a reimbursement grant for expenses we've already made, that will be easily accomplished. And that's all for the mayor's report this evening. We're going to move on to the next item under our agenda, which is informational updates. And we have ID 0768, Climate Convening Recommendations. And I'd like to ask Sustainability Coordinator Megan Curtis Murphy to make a presentation. Megan.
Great, thank you. Share my screen. Great. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council members. I'm Megan Curtis Murphy with the Office of Sustainability, and I'm joined this evening by Ann Fletcher, the Chapter Leader for People for Climate Action, and Lindsay Frickel, the Executive Director of the Issaquah Alps Trails Club. Together, we're going to share the recommendations that came out of the community convening on climate that we had in July. Back in February of this year, the Council directed the City to work with the community on a course of action to address climate change. Due to COVID, we had to cancel our in-person convening planned for May and instead held a two-part virtual convening in July. We worked with community partners, including People for Climate Action, Issaquah Alps Trails Club, Friends of the Issaquah Salmon Hatchery, and the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce to co-host the convening. This group met a couple times a month for several months to plan the meeting, and afterward to digest the information and develop the recommendations. We also distributed the recommendations to attendees and got their input for this final version you'll be seeing this evening. Prior to the convening, the group developed 4 goals for the meeting, which I will share, along with their outcomes from the meeting itself. The first was to bring together a broad cross-section of community stakeholders for a thoughtful discussion and feedback about local climate action. We invited a large spectrum of attendees and had about 50 people on each of the 2 webinars. Attendees include community members, educators, nonprofits, businesses, environmental professionals, utility representatives, and our waste hauler. We had 4 breakout groups focused on climate topics where attendees could share ideas and engage in discussion. The next goal was to provide for a common foundation of knowledge and awareness of climate data in Issaquah, as well as past and current efforts. I shared the greenhouse gas inventory that was presented to City Council in February, as well as several actions the City has taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This allowed all attendees to start with a baseline of information about climate change in Issaquah to help inform the breakout groups that we had in the second part. The next goal was to provide opportunities for building and strengthening relationships for common action. The first day, we heard from government representatives, including the mayor and myself, a business representative from Microsoft, and community representative from People for Climate Action. It's important that climate be addressed in each of these sectors, and our impact will be the greatest when we work together. Since the convening, we have heard about additional meetings, new members for organizations, and strengthening of relationships formed as a result of the convening itself. The last goal was to identify recommendations to the city and community leaders for a course of action to address climate change in Issaquah. These recommendations are meant to inform city work, but also help guide work within the community. Throughout the conversations, we heard themes about wanting to take bold action and lead in the region. These recommendations provide opportunities for each of these sectors to do so. I will now hand it over to Ann to take us through the first 4 recommendations. This will be a brief overview, but there's more information included in the memo as well. Ann? Oh, Ann, it looks like you're still on mute.
And Megan, this is the mayor. If I can get you to go on mute when the other speakers are on, because your microphone loves to pick up your breathing.
Hi, I'm Ann Fletcher with People for Climate Action. This convening, I thought it was such a great idea that Wally Bobkowitz first proposed last winter. And because Megan Curtis Murphy was so great to work with and invited such wide participation, it was a great opportunity for me and others to work in our own community to resolve what I consider one of the crucial moral and survival issues of our time. So I am really excited to be here to share the convening recommendations with you. The first recommendation is to develop a climate action plan to help focus the city's climate efforts and prioritize actions. The city has done a lot of work on climate, but as you know, we as a community are not meeting our goals. A climate action plan will allow the city to develop a cohesive framework to prioritize goals and actions and make them known to the community. And we, the people for climate action, are here to help with that. The second is to improve environmental and sustainability standards and requirements, specifically making updates to the Issaquah Municipal Code, Title 16, Buildings and Construction, and Title 18, Land Use. We learned at the convening that buildings make up 62% of our community-wide emissions. And thus, it's so important to look at how our codes support or don't support our greenhouse gas emission goals. The third recommendation is to actively support the transition to electrification of buildings and transportation systems, and at the same time, the transition away from fossil fuels. Our state is moving toward a clean electric grid thanks to Clean Energy Transformation Act, which passed the state legislature in 2019. And as Megan mentioned, there was a theme throughout the convening to take bold action. And this is one important area where we may have the opportunity to do so in the near future. The fourth recommendation is to implement the Mobility Master Plan and prioritize projects that reduce vehicle miles traveled. This would mean promoting modes other than single occupancy vehicles, including walking, biking, ride sharing, transit, and teleworking. The remaining 38% of our community's emissions is from transportation. And although not always popular, we need to figure out ways to drive less and make it easier to get around with other modes. The Mobility Master Plan includes climate goals, and our recommendation is to prioritize those. So thank you for listening and for your support in helping us reach our community-wide climate goals. The future of our community depends on the important work that we're doing right here now. And now I'll pass it on to Lindsay Frickel.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Lindsay.
Oh, great. Good evening, members of the City Council and Mayor Polly. I'm Lindsay Frickel. I'm with the Issaquah Alps Trails Club. And as Executive Director of the IATC, I took part in this convening to represent our organization's interests in the preservation and protection of our beloved Issaquah Alps, and my own interests as a mother of two little ones in making sure that we're able to offer the next generation healthy forests and public lands to enjoy throughout their lifetimes and beyond. And the IATC board and I have made climate action a priority, and collaboration with the city and partner organizations a major focus in our organization's new strategic plan. I'll be sharing the final three recommendations from the convening with you this evening. The fifth recommendation is to engage and educate the community on climate change and what they can do to help by providing resources to make taking action easy and fun. We had heard a lot of energy around this recommendation because people want to do their part to reduce emissions, but they don't always know how. Each of the co-hosting groups, including the Issaquah Alps Trails Club, is committed to helping connect their supporters to climate actions. So we're looking forward to engaging with the city and our partners on that. The next recommendation I'll talk about is the most related to our work at the IATC, which is to establish programs and partnerships to help manage and protect our urban forests, with special attention to privately owned land. This year, we saw devastating wildfires, as you all know, along the West Coast and several not too far from our homes here in Issaquah. At the Issaquah Alps Trails Club, we are dedicated to engaging the public to preserve, protect, and promote the land, wildlife, and trails of the Issaquah Alps for present and future generations. And managing our forests will help our organization's service mission, but we must pay careful attention to reducing the increased risk of wildfires due to climate change. And it's critical as well to engage private landowners in these efforts. Our final recommendation that I'll speak about is to build on the community's passion for recycling, a popular one, with special attention to multifamily and commercial sites, and extend that passion to wasting and consuming less. As we learned in the convening, recycling and composting are important, but the emissions associated with our food and our purchases are much greater. We want to help the community to buy local and save money through reuse and repair of items, which will help us reduce emissions as a city. So I want to thank you so much for your support on these issues, and I look forward to working with the city, the council, and Mayor Polly on the implementation of our community's recommendations.
Thank you, Anne and Lindsay, for sharing the recommendations, and to the rest of the planning team pictured here from one of our many virtual meetings. I think the relationships we form through this effort will be long-lasting and will help the community meet our climate reduction goals. We'd love to answer any questions or hear comments or recommendations from the convening. The city has set aside budget to develop a climate action plan next year. However, some of these recommendations don't need to wait to be put in a plan. For example, the city has been working with King County and other local jurisdictions on an electric vehicle infrastructure ordinance for new construction, which we plan to bring forward soon. We also want to get input from the Environmental Board on these recommendations and their thoughts on implementation. I want to thank all the climate convening attendees for their time and input on these recommendations, and to Council for having us here this evening. This concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. This is the mayor. While I'm waiting for council members to see if they want to ask any questions or provide any comments, I just want to thank you and Ann and Lindsay and all of the people that you got together in a crazy year like this to have this convening and have it be so meaningful, and just watching you guys smile as you do your presentation. You can tell this is the stuff you guys love. It was very fun to watch. So we'll go first to Councilmember DiMichele.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. This is Councilmember DiMichele, and I just want to echo, this was a wonderful presentation, and I was able to attend one of the sessions. I wasn't able to attend both. I think you've done a masterful job of reflecting the comments that were offered up by the community, and I think that is such a great process to have people give input and then see that input in the final product. I also love the emphasis on urgency, and that as Danny, our student earlier said, that we not get lost in process, but that we actually move forward in action. And so I really commend you, and I'm looking forward to the progress that we're going to make. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember DiMichele. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. This is Councilmember Zach Hall. I'll just add my support. Thank you so much for all this great work you put in. And I want to give you an opportunity to expand a bit on how Issaquah's youth have been involved in the process.
Sure, thank you. We've worked with some of the Issaquah Green teams to start to recruit specifically people from the Issaquah high schools to attend the convening. So we had good representation there. We've continued some of those conversations, again, kind of forming those relationships. Danny mentioned her food waste project earlier, so I've been able to connect with her on that as well. So I think through this, we've just really started to open a dialogue. I think we'll continue as we form the environmental board and have a couple youth representatives there. And then as we get involved in implementing the climate work, I imagine we'll be bringing this group back together and hopefully including more students as well, specifically as we start to implement the climate action plan.
Thank you, Megan. I actually forgot to go to Council President Hunt first to see if there were any emails that she would like to summarize on this. So Council President Hunt, I'm circling back to you.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt, and we did receive an email on this topic from a member of the community. And this member of the community wrote to us that this is the issue of our time. Climate change is the issue of our time, and was especially moved by the dedication of the community leaders that have elevated this issue and pushed it forward, and spoke to the importance of acting. That concludes comments on.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to give a few seconds to see if there are any other council members that would like to make comment or question before we go. Council President Hunt.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. I too am very enthusiastic about this work, and I really appreciate the community convening. To have 50 individuals from our community in both of the sessions is really remarkable, and I want to commend you, all of the organizers on that, and all of the community leaderships that have really pushed this forward. So thank you very much. I also wanted to speak to the importance of acting in parallel to the planning that we're doing. We will be developing a climate plan as part of these recommendations and implementing these recommendations, and I want to make sure that we use our existing processes while we implement, or while we work on developing a plan, as well as we spin up this new environmental board. And there's a King County a K4C toolkit that we also want to use. So while we're working on all of these things, I want to make sure that we're also making meaningful progress where we can in terms of policies. And as was mentioned, one area where I think we could act now to demonstrate that we do have this willingness to act is around the electric vehicle readiness. There's a draft ordinance that that will set forward us on a path to having more infrastructure ready for electric vehicles. And this would go through the planning policy process and could return to council in January. So I would like to see that happen. I think there's a lot to be done, and I'd like to make sure that we take action where we can. I also wanted to point out that this has been on our city work plan since the beginning of this year. There was an action item on our city work plan for electric vehicle infrastructure. And then with COVID and all of the shifting around, that was on track, and it, looking at, I think this is the August version of that work plan, it became on hold, as has some other sustainability actions. So lots of work to do, but this is one I think we could accelerate, and I would like to do that to keep this momentum and enthusiasm and show that we can act. And then also in the near term, we will be looking at our legislative agenda. I know that this is something that is on Megan's radar, but as we look to the legislative agenda, I would like to make sure that we reflect these community values in our legislative agenda, especially around encouraging the electrification of transportation as well as buildings, and making sure that we can, as a city, implement that. So that concludes my comments, and I did want to just make sure that if other council members would like to see the acceleration of the electric vehicle ordinance, it'd be very helpful to make sure that you indicate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Hunt. I'm going to take a second to go back to City Administrator Bobkowitz. A commitment to January sounds great if they can actually get the work done. So let me go to the City Administrator and Megan and see if you have comments on the time frame. And is there anything that gets put aside, or is this something that is easily accomplished by January? So either Wally or Megan.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, certainly we have talked with the council president about this. We believe that there's been a lot of groundwork already done on the issue, and we believe we should be able to get this back to the council the first of the year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Any other comments? I'll give a few seconds and look in the chat box to see if any other council members have any comments. I know, yeah, I was going to say, I know as soon as I say there's none, something will pop up. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Councilmember Issaquah here. Just real quick, and just for the sake of direction, that I would be supportive of moving forward with the ED readiness ordinance by the first of the year. Thank you.
That's great. Still looking in the chat box. I got a thumbs up from Councilmember DeMichelle and a couple of head nods. So looks like we're looking good. Not seeing anybody else wishing to chat. Again, I just really want to thank our staff member, Megan, and the community team that pulled together to do this. There was a lot of stuff that we didn't get to this year, but you got this work done, and it has really gotten people excited in the community. So thank you so much for everything you guys did. Did a fabulous job. Okay, 2 thumbs up. I'm going to move to the consent calendar next. The consent calendar was distributed to council in advance.
Madam Mayor, this is Tisha. I believe we have one more informational update this evening.
Did I just breeze right through that? I did. Oh my goodness, Beth, I'm so sorry. I was too far down my script. Yes, the next informational item is ID 0749, Visit Issaquah's annual update. I apologize, Beth. And so what I'd like to do right now is ask Economic Development Manager Jen Davis-Hayes to start us off on this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council members. My name is Jen Davis-Hayes. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the city, and I'll do a quick introduction. Tonight, we'll hear the annual report from Visit Issaquah, and Beth Javins, the Executive Director, will be here to present that. We realize that October typically isn't the end of the year, but we have 2 other LTAC and lodging tax information items on the agenda. We thought it was a good time to have a more thorough discussion about what's happening in our tourism industry. And so I'm going to be the slide sharer, and Beth is going to present, and I will share my screen. And go ahead, Beth, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Jen, and good evening, Madam Mayor and council members, the city staff, and our engaged Issaquah civic community that is on the call. Thanks for the opportunity to present this evening. I'm Beth Javins. I'm the Executive Director with Visit Issaquah. And Jen is going to be my handy slide changer this evening. So thank you, Jen. I'd like to acknowledge our volunteer board of directors who, our current board, who currently serve the members of the community and Visit Issaquah. They are professionals in their own right, and they are in the travel and tourism space, in hospitality, recreation, and event marketing. Second, I wanted to express a great deal of gratitude to the mayor, the Mayor's Recovery Task Force, the council, and DIA for implementing and acting on the Front Street Streetery. I think we have a lot of information, and certainly as a resident here, I enjoy seeing it being open, and I also know that there are a lot of people that come and enjoy it, and it's been a welcome for the business community in downtown. And I want to reiterate our efforts as a tourism promotion entity at promoting Issaquah throughout the last year and a half, through our website, through our community calendar, through our newsletter, our e-blasts, both in-person and virtual sales efforts, our visitor fulfillment, and the current tools that we use for promoting tourism in the region. And that supports over 50 businesses on our community calendar and over 170 businesses on our website. But before I touch on the focal points, which include our 2020 business outreach and successful digital and marketing strategies and our featured content and data that resulted in direct business to the Issaquah community, I wanted to share an article that was briefly share an article that was written by a colleague at Seattle Southside. And they were writing about what DMOs like Visit Issaquah are doing this year to impact their communities and why they matter. So I'm going to insert Visit Issaquah into the narrative here, but Megan McGuire of Seattle Southside writes that DMOs, like Visit Issaquah, are helping promote immediate revenue generating programs. That's supporting our local businesses who sell gift cards, supporting the businesses that have pivoted to online and supporting their innovation and helping promote their virtual activities and supporting what can be sold right now, including expanded dining, seating, and takeout like the Streetery. DMOs like Visit Issaquah are marketing our destinations with sensitivity to the audience and pivoting to meet market conditions, creating demand for our businesses when travelers do make a destination decision to travel in the future. DMOs like Visit Issaquah are providing data to our businesses, to our chambers of commerce, to our Washington State parks, to our Friends of Lake Sammamish State Park, to the zoo, to Village Theater, and others about traveler sentiment, traveler spending, traveler demographics, and trends. And we do this regularly and on a weekly basis with our vision partners and the city. DMOs like Visit Issaquah are centralizing and coordinating recovery efforts with the Issaquah Vision Partners with a focus on business operations, health and safety campaigns, and economic recovery strategies. And finally, DMOs like Visit Issaquah are creating and advocating awareness for diversity, equity, and inclusion, social and environmental and sustainable marketing programs like Recreate Responsibly, advocating for a city's climate action plan, and all within the hopes of the destination being better for visitors and the host community after COVID than it was before the pandemic. Thank you for letting me share that. Jen, can you move to the next slide, please? So we all know the effects of the pandemic, and we want to look ahead at when business is likely to recover, and we're seeing a full recovery perhaps in the year 2023. But the pent-up demand for travel started this summer, and I think we all saw some of that. Trends are pointing to small business group travel emerging sometime maybe in late spring or in the summer, and a full gathering ability for people to gather is about a year away. So we're looking at the fall of 2021. In either case, seeing more business travel emerge and small group travel is going to help our hotels and get our largest meeting facility up and running and help assist with other citywide meeting facilities that are sitting empty. Next slide, please. Thanks, Jen. One more. Thanks. So we're often asked what our impact is to the community, and we have been educating our partners, we've been educating our community and local residents, we've been educating our visitors, and also educating other tourism-related advocacy groups in a number of ways. So how have we been educating the partners and business community? We educate and support the verticals like the Chamber of Commerce, like Issaquah Highlands, DIA, and our other organizations and retailers like Grand Ridge Plaza, Gilman Village, and our arts and recreation community. And we've been doing that with webinars throughout the year, as well as keeping up with trends that we've evolved with through the pandemic. And one of the examples of our education with our partners is our window cling program that we distributed over 175 window clings to local businesses in every retail center in the city after June 19th. An example of educating our broader community and our residents is mainly done through digital and social campaigns currently. And it supports districts like the Creative Arts District. It supports districts like downtown Issaquah and DIA. There are several campaigns that happen throughout the year, approximately 13. We're talking about our Issaquah Loyal program that we have been promoting, the Streetery, the East Side Coalition, which is a collaboration of cities from Redmond to Kirkland to Bellevue, Issaquah, and others. We posted all of our restaurants on their external websites when we had the early COVID pandemic shutdown. We also had Issaquah Strong and Eastside Together. And our program right now is uniquely Issaquah, which is a hyper-local business feature and features only businesses that can be found in Issaquah, that distinguishes Issaquah as a very unique destination. All those businesses can only be found here. In addition, we had 3 other campaigns and giveaways that reached 20 additional businesses and many residents. Next 2 slides, Jen. We also educate visitors, and we do that with content, and we do it on social media. And the goal is to really keep Issaquah top of mind. So when travel resumes, people have Issaquah in top of mind to visit. And that includes Facebook, it includes Instagram, it includes Twitter, it includes mobile ID features and apps, and the impact to our website since we have engaged in featuring this content has been astronomical. We are mindful that we're in phase 2. We know that people are looking for safe protocols and safe travel, and we think our Issaquah business community has done an amazing job at doing that and providing that for the community and for others. Next slide, please. And finally, educating our community and also our other businesses on the regional level, on the state level, and in some cases on the national level with toolkits from the Washington Tourism Alliance promoting travel and visitation and safety protocols within the state. The Washington Hospitality Association, which has been very involved in the restaurant guidelines, and we did a presentation on phase 2 guidelines about 3 months ago to the Chamber of Commerce and others. And then finally, the United States Travel Association, which oversees travel for Brand USA. And we are proud to be a representative on the board of the Washington Destination Marketing Organization. And we also have collaborated with Recreate Responsibly, Issaquah Alps Trails Club, and Mountains to Sound Greenway Heritage Area, as well as REI, to promote that program. Next slide, please. So the amount of traffic on our social media has just steadily increased month over month. Our presence and our features of the businesses are hundreds of businesses featured, thousands of engagements and reach, and it's steadily increasing at about almost 10% per month. Next slide. Briefly, just want to show you a few other promotional engagements that we've been involved with. We were fortunate to get the port ad again, and we had a mini spectacular, which was a grant from the Port of Seattle. We've had so much positive response on just the creative content on this ad. It's not as clear in this picture, but because of the glare at the airport, we know that only about 20,000 people are going through the airport right now, but we've had some stunning feedback on this, as well as some other posts and our Washington State Visitor Guide ad, which was distributed to 350,000 households. Next slide, please. One more slide. So the digital growth, as you can see, month over month, again, Google search engine optimization. This is the way that people are finding out about Issaquah. And so it continues to be important that we feature that in our promotional activities on digital. Next slide, please. Our most popular website topics, you can see from just a screenshot here. Our organic search is driving all of our search at the moment, and then we also have paid, referred, and social. But overall, our most popular topic has been Cougar Mountain Zoo since April when we launched our website, followed by plan your trips, both in hotels and dining. And the reason for that is because of the featured content that we use for mobile ID, and I'll explain that in a minute. We also had experiences, events, salmon days, and XXX root beer drive-in as very popular topics since we launched our website. Next slide, please. So we were one of the first organizations to feature and support the diversity, equity, and inclusion online and advocating for social justice and Black Lives Matter advocacy, and hoping to build an inclusive and welcoming environment in the outdoor space with one of the 7 tenets of the Recreate Responsibly campaign. And we want to continue to do this. This is one of our most important posts this year. And we hope to do this again, continue our work in our newsletter and other content. Next slide, please. So with regard to the data and the popularity on our website, there's definitely a correlation between the two. We were very well prepared to leverage our outdoor community. We knew that people were interested in getting out and being out in the outdoors, which we're very well known for. And so we started to feature in July some content, including mountain biking, hiking, paragliding, beer. It was very popular. And we wanted to keep Issaquah, again, top of mind. So whenever people were ready to travel, they would click on this ad and they would immediately go to our website. And we can follow these IDs in perpetuity, even when the ads have gone away. So if somebody decides to travel next year in July, we would be able to see that data. So in July, we served 1 million impressions of this ad with those features. And it resulted in over 300 hotel stays directly to the hotels here in our community. And again, we do realize we're in phase 2. We want to be sensitive to safety. We know our hotels have engaged in a lot of national programs and are doing everything they can with protocols and safety. Next slide, please. So part of the data that we retrieved, and I've talked about this in previous presentations, is that Tiger Mountain drives a lot of the business into the area, but we also need to capture more of that business. And so that would be definitely a focus. What we would like to do again going forward in the future is find ways to see how we can capitalize on that. And you can see from this data that from July 2nd, what the correlation is for the zip codes of people visiting from Idaho, Oregon, and these are just out of state. But there is a correlation where they have traveled beyond Tiger Mountain, if they've been to downtown, if they've gone to Gilman Village, stayed in a hotel, or have traveled to Grand Ridge Plaza. And we also have data for in-state as well, which is significantly our region and Seattle metro area. Next slide, please. And one more. So our website, again, absolutely had a jump in a correlation between the features of both mountain biking and hiking. And now we turn our attention to salmon viewing and a virtual salmon days, which we launched at the end of August and served up 100,000 impressions on that and have witnessed thousands of devices from people who have come to the area to hopefully take tours and embrace the fish hatchery and to join in the virtual Salmon Days event. And I think what I'm trying to get at is the result is that our content features are working. We can do more and we can do better going forward as we evolve through the phases and travel becomes more accessible for everybody. And then finally, on the next slide, we donated $100,000 in sponsorships to 11 recipients who are nonprofit organizations, from history to culture to performing arts, events, advocacy, and they were awarded sponsorships that's providing relief for programs and for volunteer needs and operations. And we believe, and our board of directors firmly believes, that this is an investment in building an Issaquah destination that is thoughtful of its residents. It admires its treasures, it promotes its attractions, and it supports a visitor economy as well. And I know that there are remaining slides, and we submitted several and some got rearranged. I would say that the remaining slides are basically a general statement featuring industry sectors in retail and restaurants. We were on a call earlier today with Mayor Pauley about restaurants and the importance of restaurants to economies, and that people join together at restaurants and form memories. And so that's why they're very important, and our restaurant sector here is very strong. So with that, I thank you very much for the time this evening, and we will be happy to entertain questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Beth, and thank you, Jen. Before we go to council member questions, I'm going to go to Council President Hunt and ask if there was any email or comments from the public you received on this agenda item.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. No, we did not receive any emails specifically on this informational item.
Great. Well, Beth and Jen have offered to take questions, and I'm going to keep my eye on the chat, look for questions or comments from the council members. Councilmember DiMichele, question.
And I remembered to unmute again. Beth and Jen, this is an annual report, and so I had asked earlier, are we going to get a financial report? And I know it's been a crazy year, and things went topsy-turvy after about March, but I was hoping to see a financial report as part of the presentation.
We'll work with Beth to collect one and share it with the entire council.
Thank you, Jen. Going to go to Council President Hunt next.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. In addition to the web presence, I believe you also have a physical presence for the office. And in several emails today that we received, it was pointed out that the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce's Visitor Information Center is ADA accessible. And I wondered if your office is ADA accessible, and then also, if not, what the plans are to address that.
Thank you very much for that question. So we are located in a loft in a second floor. We are not currently the official visitor information center. We serve visitors. We do have a box outside that is accessible for visitors and with mobility issues or disabilities that we don't have out there right now currently due to the weather, but we can offer some information out there. We can certainly entertain relocating an office to a ground floor location that is ADA accessible, but I believe that the ADA accessibility requirement for the official tourism information office that is part of perhaps a contract with the Department of Transportation is something that's required by them. I'm not entirely familiar with what that contract is, but if the chamber is still on the call, I'm sure Kathy would be happy to answer that question as well. She probably has more familiarity with that.
Council President Hunt, did that answer your question?
It did, and just to clarify, I just referenced the visitor center, which is a separate building, because that was raised in emails, that was ADA accessible, and so that was the purpose of my question. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions. Council President Hunt was the last one to sign up. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Beth or Jen? Councilmember Hall.
Thanks, Mayor Polly. This is Councilmember Zach Hall. Just a real quick question for either Beth or Jen. One of the slides that was presented to us today was the anatomy of a travel recovery with kind of a schedule of when things might be expected to open up. I was just wondering what that was based on. That was really interesting to see. I haven't seen anything like that before.
So thank you, Councilmember Hall. Well, we follow a lot of what we'll call destination analysts, or I believe that one was completed by Tourism Economics. It was a screenshot of a webinar that I was on that I wanted to capture because I felt like that was, that's a lot of what we're hearing in our business is this is when things are going to start opening up. And as I've mentioned to LTAC and others, our hotel community is 75% corporate based. So while there's a huge void in that particular market at the moment, and that is what's really hurting the hotel community here. That's why our focus is going to be on leisure business, but we fully expect in the spring and sometime in early summer. Of course, this is all vaccine dependent, I would think, by health protocols. But we've also been told that just because we have more flexible phases and people are able to travel more does not necessarily mean they're going to or they feel comfortable doing so. So we always want to keep our eye on what people are saying out there and, again, be mindful of the protocols and sensitivity to that, both with the community and with the visitor.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall, did you get your question answered? That's great. Not seeing anyone else right now signing up for a question. Give it a few seconds. Okay. I want to thank both Jen and Beth for coming in to give the annual report, and I think Councilmember DiMichele had a great request there for the annual financial report. It'd be very interesting to see. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Appreciate having you here. Now I will move to the consent calendar, which I tried to jump to earlier. So this consent calendar was distributed to council in advance, and if authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
This is Councilmember Walsh. They have.
And this is Councilmember Hall. They have.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the city clerk just quickly because there is a comment for a correction on the consent calendar. City clerk?
Yes. Prior to tonight's meeting, a revised version of consent calendar item F, the October 5th regular city council minutes, was distributed by email. The corrected minutes revise the maker and seconder of the amendment made under AB 8047. With approval of the consent calendar tonight, we will consider the City Council to be approving the revised version that was circulated. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you to council members for reading the minutes and finding things like that. That's awesome. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? Before we move to the motion, I'm going to come back to Council President Hunt just to see if there were any emails on any items on the consent calendar from public that you would like to share this evening.
There were no comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do I have somebody ready to make a motion? Council President Hunt?
I move to adopt the consent calendar as it appears in our agenda.
Is there a second? Deputy Council President Ray.
This is Chris Ray. I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded, and I'm going to move back to the city clerk for her to do a roll call vote.
Starting with Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Council President Hunt.
Aye.
Deputy Council President Ray.
Aye.
Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. The next item of business this evening is a public hearing, AB 7990, the proposed 2021 budget and its levy and revenue sources, and we will be conducting the public hearing. Tonight, the required public hearing is conducted. However, council is not being asked to take any action. So I'd like to invite Finance Director Beth Goldberg to make a presentation. Thanks, Beth.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight is public hearing night of our annual budget process. We have 2 public hearings this evening, one on the property tax and revenue sources, and then the other one is a public hearing on the budget, which will be the first of 2 public hearings. I've got 2 quick presentations for you before we start each of the respective public hearings, starting with the property tax. Okay, so just one moment here. So RCW 8455 requires jurisdictions levying a property tax to hold a public hearing prior to adopting the property tax levy rates for the subsequent fiscal year. So that public hearing is happening tonight. And then we will be back on November 2nd with an ordinance and a substantial need resolution that I'll explain in a moment for a city council vote on November 2nd. In addition, the 2021 proposed budget is supported by revenues from some proposed increases to our CPD permit fees, and there will be a presentation on that later tonight, and we'll be looking for council to vote on that proposal on November 16th, which is also the day that the budget is scheduled to come before the council for a vote. So just a quick overview about property tax. Property tax represents 21% of the city's general fund, which is $46.6 million. Property tax is the green portion in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. It represents about $9.8 million. I will point out that the amount that we are putting forth now is about $49,000 higher than what we assumed in the original proposed budget. is a reminder to council members that have been through this process in past years. Our property tax levy is based on assessed property valuation in the city of Issaquah, including new construction. And the King County Assessor's Office is the one that determines what that assessed valuation is. And they go through, their process goes through November, where they're updating that valuation, including new construction. So the numbers do tend to bounce around a little bit while we're waiting for them to finalize that valuation. When we update the revenue forecast for you in early November, we will reflect that $49,000 increase in property tax revenues. About a little bit about property tax. So state law allows jurisdictions to increase the property tax levy annually by 1% or the implicit price deflator, which is a measure of inflation, whichever is lower, plus new construction. Most years, the implicit price deflator is in excess of 1%, but on occasion, it falls below 1%. And being that it is 2020 and strange things happen in 2020, this is a year where the implicit price deflator is falling below 1%, which it's falling at 0.605%. So state law allows jurisdictions to still levy 1% if the implicit price deflator is less than 1%, if the jurisdiction declares a substantial need. And the administration is recommending with this year's budget that the City Council adopt a substantial need resolution so that we can levy the full 1%. So the chart on this slide shows a history of the implicit price deflator. This is set by the State Department of Revenue based on second quarter implicit price deflator. And what you will see here is that, as I mentioned on the previous slide, most years the implicit price deflator is above 1%. But there have been two instances in the past 10 years where the implicit price deflator fell below 1%, and those are the 2 years shown in red on this chart. In those 2 years, the Issaquah City Council did adopt a substantial need ordinance or resolution, so we do have precedent for this action. Substantial need resolution in 2021 would protect about $38,000 in property tax revenue. If the city were to not adopt the substantial need ordinance, we would be collecting $38,000 less in property tax, and then that would lower our base that future years property tax is calculated. In terms of impact on the average property owner, it would represent about $2.65 a year annually for the average property owner in the city of Issaquah. So, as I mentioned at the outset, the proposed budget also includes revenue proposals to increase the permit fees charged by community planning and development to achieve the council stated policy of 80% cost recovery. So there will be an initial presentation this evening about the proposal, and then, as I mentioned earlier, we will be coming back with asking the council to vote on the package on November 16th, which is the evening that the budget would be considered as well. So with that, my presentation is concluded. I'm happy to answer any questions, and then the council can open the public hearing.
That sounds great. Thank you, Director Goldberg. Council President, did you receive any email summary that you needed to summarize before we go to questions?
No, not on this topic. Thanks.
Thank you. So, looks like we'll be starting with Councilmember Goodman for questions.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Councilmember Goodman here. Director Goldberg, you mentioned in one of your last couple of slides, the impact of the average Issaquah property owner is $2.65. Is that $2.65 increase in 2021?
That's correct.
Can you tell me what the definition of average is?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I believe Jean Paul is on the call tonight, and he may know what that dollar value is. And if not, I realize I'm putting him on the spot. If not, we can get back to you with that.
Okay, and then I would be curious to have just a few sentences on why there would, just because we have a 1% increase in collections does not mean that folks pay more, because it depends on how it's spread over the assessed valuation. And so I would be interested to get a little bit more information on why there's an increase at all, given the assessed valuation of properties has been the rise.
Yeah. So it depends. You're right. It depends on how your property in particular is valued by the King County assessor, and I'm using you in a royal you sort of way. So the way property tax works in Washington State is that it's a budget-based tax. So we're allowed to collect 1% more than the previous year. So if we were levying $100 in 2020, we could levy $101 the following year plus new construction. So how that then is parsed among property owners is dependent on the valuation of the homeowner's home, or the property owner's property. And so if property values are increasing, the percentage that people are paying could actually decrease because of the way the math works. The Washington State, the way property tax is calculated in Washington State is among the most complicated, because they're sort of it's a little bit counterintuitive, in large part because it's pegged not to the value of your home. Your home, if you looked at your property tax bill, it may go up by 1%, it may go up by more, it may go up less, depending on the valuation, but we're allowed to collect 1% more plus new construction. The other thing I guess I should point out here is that we're not the only jurisdiction collecting property tax. So residents' property tax bills include property tax for the city of Issaquah. It includes property tax for the school district. It includes property tax for the Port of Seattle, for King County. So what those other jurisdictions are doing, for example, there is a property tax measure on the ballot this fall for Harborview. If that passes, that will impact our taxpayers' property tax, but that is not a tax that we are directly responsible for, or revenue that we are directly receiving.
Thank you. Yes, I still would like a little bit more information on the average homeowner in the 265. And if it needs to come later, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. Is there any other council questions before we go to public hearing? Okay, not seeing any. The guidelines for citizen comments also apply to our public hearing. Oops, So I am now going to open the public hearing at 8:38 p.m. And again, for those who are still with us tonight, if you would like to speak on this item and you didn't sign up in advance, you can press *3 on your phone, and we will call the last 2 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to make comments. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak this evening or indicated a desire to speak?
No, no one has signed up to speak in advance. So I'll just reiterate your comment that any of our phone-in callers, if you could please press *3 on the phone if you'd like to make comments this evening. Give me just a moment to monitor that.
Will do. Thank you.
And I don't see anyone indicating a desire to speak.
Thank you. So is there any objection to closing the public hearing? Just looking at faces. Okay. Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing at 8:39 p.m. And we will move on. Oh, as stated earlier, there was no council action being requested this evening, and this item will be back before council for action at the November 2nd council meeting. So the next item on our agenda this evening is AB 7991, the proposed 2021 budget and salary ordinance. And again, we will be conducting a public hearing. So I did present my 2021 proposed budget at the September 29th council meeting, and since then, the council has considered the budget at October 6th and October 13th city council study sessions. Tonight, the first of 2 required public hearings will be conducted, but no council action is being sought this evening. So I will go back to Finance Director Goldberg to make a presentation.
On mutes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second public hearing of this evening is the preliminary public hearing on the proposed budget and salary ordinance. And this one is required under RCW 35A.33, which requires cities to hold 2 public hearings prior to adopting the budget. Tonight is the preliminary public hearing, and then the final public hearing, and there is a typo on this slide, is November 16th, not November 18th. So just to clarify that point, as a reminder, okay, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties with my toggle switch. Sorry about that. As a reminder, our schedule, this chart should look familiar to all of you. Our schedule, we are now on October 19th, the public hearing, and then we'll be moving towards future budget deliberations on October 27th and November 5th. As I just mentioned, property tax will be up for a vote on November 2nd, and then we'll be marching towards budget adoption on November 16th. So as an overview of the budget, this year's budget totals $122.6 million. It's $20.5 million or 14.3% smaller than 2020. As we discussed at some of the earlier budget deliberation sessions, this is largely because of a smaller capital program this year. The budget is meeting the city's strategic priorities. This is a chart that shows how the dollars are allocated among the various priorities in the city's strategic plan. This is the first year we have been able to display the city's budget by strategic plan category. In terms of the general fund totals $49 million, and this is about 1.8% smaller than the 2020 adopted budget. In terms of FTEs, the budget eliminates 36 FTEs and prioritizes several other positions. As we discussed at the last budget deliberation session, the total number of FTEs is lower than it's been even following or even during the Great Recession. In terms of the impact of the budget on fund balance, the budget does make use of some of our fund balance, but it does leave the ending undesignated fund balance above the 15 to 20% target is highlighted in the light green bar in the middle of this slide. And that concludes my overview of the 2021 proposed budget. Happy to answer any questions prior to opening the public hearing.
Thank you, Director Goldberg. Council President Hunt, did we have any public comments received by email on this particular public hearing?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did receive an email which was on the budget, and we received it between now and the last time that we had a discussion on the budget, so I will summarize it now. And this community member was concerned about the increase in the budget for police and felt that this was going in the opposite direction that it should. And this community member was also excited about the new community services positions that are in the proposed budget. And that concludes budget-related emails that we've received since the last time we've discussed the proposed budget.
Thank you, Council President. Looking over in the chat to see if there's any council members with questions for our director before we proceed to the public hearing. Not seeing any questions at this moment. The guidelines for citizen comments also apply to those made under the public hearing, and I'm going to now open the public hearing at 8:45 p.m. Anyone that is still on with us and would like to speak tonight can press *3. That will raise their hand and show our city clerk, and we'll get you added to the list. And City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
No, Mayor, no one has signed up to speak, and I'm looking at our participant list here, and I don't see any of our phone-in callers indicating a desire to speak.
Thank you. Is there any objection to closing the public hearing? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing at 8:46 p.m. And as stated, there was no council action being requested this evening. The council will continue to deliberate their budget at the remaining council study sessions, and this item will be back before council on November 16th for a public hearing on the final budget and potential adoption. Moving on to regular business, I thought I would take the temperature of the group and see. You've been here for a little over 2 hours now. Before we move into regular business, is there a desire to have a short break or keep on going? Short break. Okay, let's take 5 minutes and be back at 8:51. Thank you all. Tim, I give you a 10-second warning to restart. Welcome back, everyone, from the break. We'll be moving into the regular business items right now. The first item is AB 8029, 2020 Lodging Tax Advisory Committee Funding Amendment. The action before the council this evening is for approval, and this is the first time this item is coming before council. I'd like to invite Economic Development Manager Jen Davis-Hayes to make a presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I am going to start sharing my screen and then start the presentation because I think that's kind of how it works with this PowerPoint. So we are here this evening to talk about a request from the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee about a budget adjustment and funding for several organizations that applied for this application. So they have a recommendation. LTAC has made a recommendation to fund 6, and I believe I might have had a wrong number in here in the packet, 6 applicants, not 5 applicants, for a total of $52,075. And they currently do not have that budget authority. So we're here tonight to seek your approval or your review and approval for the funding initiatives for the businesses and nonprofits that have applied. We haven't been to the council for a bit regarding LTAC, and so I just wanted to remind some of those, so everybody who's watching, as per the ordinance, LTAC members must be an even number of members that are funders and potential recipients of lodging tax, and then our council member chairs it. So here's a list of those who are on the current LTAC committee. Earlier this year, we had a discussion about the lodging tax funds. We saw a drastic reduction of the lodging tax collection for March, which is received by the city in May. February collections were over $14,000. March was $2,900, and April was $2,400. So obviously, we know that we had a reduction of travel because of COVID-19, but we also had the Holiday Inn, which is 100 rooms. That is a temporary change from the use of a hotel to a COVID-19 facility. Motel 6 suspended operations for a while until June, and that's 103 rooms. And the Hilton Garden Inn is currently suspended operations, and that's another 179 rooms. So we have a total of 650 rooms in the city. So again, when one hotel temporary suspends operations, it's a reduction of our revenues. So the LTAC committee looked at, at these numbers and decided to take two steps to respond. One of them is to support the tourist amenities and businesses that currently exist. So obviously we want to make sure that the reasons that people come to visit Issaquah and take advantage of all of the wonderful things we have continue to exist. They decided to do a twofold approach, is to have a funding opportunity for those nonprofits and businesses in the fall of this year, the $50,000, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, and in the spring again. And so we'll come back. Actually, that $50,000 is in the budget proposal that you're talking about now, so we'll come back in the spring once that application process is done to discuss those. The other piece of that effort was to reduce the funding for 21 efforts, which we'll talk about later this evening. So for the funding application, sorry, my mouse. Basically, again, we have to follow the lodging tax regulations of how to spend those resources. So we looked at supporting marketing to visitors outside of Issaquah and the operations of nonprofit-owned tourism-related facilities. We opened up to businesses and nonprofits, and they could make a request up to $10,000. We did receive 6 applications, And here's the list of those applications and what they requested as funding. Again, up to $10,000 was allowed, and it has the initiatives on the slide as well. So for instance, Cougar Mountain Zoo is looking to modify their reindeer festival. Geo Coin Fest is looking to do a self-guided city-wide tour next summer. Again, it's not an event that comes together, but people can do that on their own. The Greater Issaquah Chamber is looking to support the Visitor Information Center. The Issaquah History Museums applied for the trolley operations, and I'll mention that in a second and talk a little bit more about that. And Triple X Root Beer talked about continuing to be a community landmark, and Village Theater applied for theater operations. So as we know, the Issaquah History Museums announced on Friday that their trolley operations would not occur in 2021 due to several actions, including several reasons, including the financial increase of costs, that include insurance and some other things, as well as potential concerns around COVID-19. We are proposing that we continue to fund the full 52,075 because of lodging tax rules. If any changes are made to the recommendation, we would have to go back to the LTAC committee and get comments on that, on any changes, and then come back to council before we'd be able to fund these initiatives. And so we really want to make sure that the funding gets out in people's hands. We will not do a contract with an organization that does not want to move forward. But it gives us the flexibility to move forward this evening. And talking about timeline, so again, we very quickly moved through this. The applications were finalized by the LTAC on September 1st. We allowed for a month for applications to get in. At the 14th, which was last Wednesday, application reviewed by LTAC. So that was before the trolley, the History Museum board met. We're hoping for a decision tonight, and we'll move forward with contracting this month and next. So again, we're looking for a budget amendment of $52,075 and funding of the 6 initiatives as recommended by LTAC.
Thank you for the presentation, Jen. Council President Hunt, were there any emails from the public you'd like to share on this agenda item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we did receive an email from the Executive Director of the Issaquah History Museum regarding the trolley decision that had been made, and also offering to discuss with us, give us more information, have a conversation. And then we also received comments on this from the CEO of the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, and she spoke through her comments earlier this evening. So I will leave that summary as she spoke through her comments directly. And that concludes comments on this topic.
Thank you, Council President. Let's start with a question from Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. This is Chris Ray. Jen, I want to make sure that I understand what you just told us. So even though the Issaquah History Museum is not going to operate the trolley and is not going to need the $7,500 that was allocated, you're asking us to go ahead and approve this agenda bill as written, recognizing that we will authorize more dollars than will be spent. Is that a fair summary? I'm just want to make sure that I understand what we're being asked to do.
Yes, and lodging tax, again, is a little unique where they have rules. So if a proposal that comes from LTAC to council is changed in a funding amount or selection of items, it has to go back for within 45 days for comment to the committee, then come back before council can take action. So the one thing is that this money is coming from the fund. So if that $7,500 is not spent, it will remain in the fund. It doesn't get lost this budget year to anything else. So there's not a problem with LTAC then losing those dollars. So it is a little different, but again, it's something that we have to follow the rules for the statewide lodging tax revenues.
Yeah, following rules is good. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate the clarification.
Thank you, Deputy Council President Ray. I know we have a couple of folks who want to make some comments, and we can do that after the motion. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question before we move to the motion? I'll give it a few seconds. Okay, seeing no additional questions, but lots of comments. It looks like Councilmember Goodman is prepared to make a motion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Polly. I would move to approve the allocation of $52,075 to fund business and nonprofit tourism-related activities as recommended by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and direct the Finance Director to include $52,075 in a subsequent 2020 budget amendment from the Lodging Tax Reserve Fund.
And I'm looking for a second. Council President Hunt.
Second.
Thank you. So let's start with some comments. I'm not sure if the motion maker, Councilmember Goodman, would you like to start with a comment?
The only comment that, I guess a couple of comments. We had fairly significant discussion on all of the applications, and very thoughtful conversation. And I know that the committee wants the money out into the hands of these organizations. And I would like to follow up on Jen Davis-Hayes' comments about the approving an allocation for funds that we think today might not be used. Who knows what could happen? This was new information, and it could be that something changes over the next few weeks or so, and the trolley, who knows, could run again. So I'm hoping that the council will support the allocation. And again, as Ms. Davis-Hayes says, if it's not used, then it remains in the reserve fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. I will go to Council President Hunt.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt, and I firstly appreciate that this money is going out to these tourist supporting organizations in our community that do have specific challenges right now around COVID-19 and helping them get through this time. So I appreciate that, and I hope that this can be a continued pattern of using some of the lodging tax funds to continue to support these businesses. Again, we don't know what will happen, how long these challenges will remain, and so I think that this kind of support is so critical right now. So I will be in support of the full funding amount. And then on the topic of the Issaquah History Museum's trolley, we did receive an email indicating a willingness to have a conversation and provide more information about the decision that was made regarding the trolley. And personally, as a mother of small children, and then, just having lived in this community with my kids since they were infants, we've really enjoyed the trolley, and I know so many families have done that. And then also, when people come from out of town, if you have small children, it really is one of the fun things to do with small children, and it does connect families with the history of Issaquah. So I hope that we can get more information about this decision. The city also has supported the Issaquah History Museum in numerous ways in the past, and I would like to ask City Administrator Bob Quitz if it would be possible to have more information brought back about this decision, also so that if there are community members who are wanting information about this, that it could be brought forward, put on an agenda, and that we could have a discussion.
Madam Mayor, Council President Hunt, certainly we could bring that back at the council's direction.
Thank you, City Administrator. Council President, does that answer all your questions?
It does.
Thank you very much. Going to go to Councilmember DeMichelle.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. I was also going to propose that we have the Issaquah History Museums come in and address this at a council meeting. I appreciated the executive director's offer to talk to us. I think that talk should be to all of us all at the same time. So that would be at a council meeting. I am concerned because the loss of the trolley is exactly at the time when we are needing items to attract tourists to Issaquah. And so I'm hopeful that perhaps we could find a solution, and perhaps that solution will be in the allocation of the grant that's being proposed tonight. So I will be supporting this motion as well. Very hopeful that perhaps we as a community can find a solution to the problems facing the History Museum. So, and I think the other grants that are on this list are also equally valuable and positive. And I too think that this is an excellent way for us to distribute our funds. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember DiMichele. I see a question and then maybe a final comment from Councilmember Goodman. We'll do the question first. Council President Hunt.
Thank you. I believe this is a question for City Clerk Geisher. Should we, if I am going to make a motion, should I make that motion now regarding directing for a presentation and an opportunity to talk with the director of Issaquah History Museum? Should I make that now or following this motion?
I'm not sure that you really need to do that. We've heard you and we'll reach out to her. So, but thank you for bringing that up. We'll definitely reach out to her and we'll ask for it to be done on camera so that you be able to ask questions. So likely an informational item.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And not seeing any other questions, I'll go back for a final comment from Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Goodman here. A couple of things. You'll recall from Ms. Davis-Hayes' presentation that the amount that Lodging Tax Advisory Committee is planning to get out into the community is $100,000, $50,000 now and $50,000 in March. And then you will see that if the allocation today is $52,075, oh, but wait, you ask, what does that leave us for March? And so the committee is not recommending spending more than $100,000. So the call in March would be for whatever the remainder is. And so if the trolley doesn't utilize their money, then that will include that money. If they do, then it will be less than $50,000 because we're going over $50,000 in this funding cycle. And then the second thing, just to be clear to everybody here in this meeting, everybody watching, listening, and including the council members, that the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's purview is very narrow. It makes recommendations to the council about how to spend funds. It is not trolley operations or any other attractions, events, businesses, nonprofits, anything in Issaquah, and any concerns that we might have about them. Whether they're not operating or suspended or, similar issues with the Village Theater and not having, even though they're open, not having full operations. So just to be clear for everybody watching, that's, of course, the committee would have been concerned as well on Wednesday had we heard about the trolley before Friday or before our meeting. But we just have very narrow questions. So that we address, which is funding. So that's why, even if we had heard about it, we don't address those questions. So I think it's great that we look into the trolley issue more. It is an important attraction for Issaquah. It's very popular, and I know that everybody on the committee would be supportive of the council getting more information. But it's not really the business of LTAC. I just wanted to remind everybody who's watching of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any additional questions or comments. And it has been moved and seconded, or it has not? I can't remember. It has. Okay. So if there is no other comments or questions, the motion is to approve the allocation of $52,075 to fund business and nonprofit tourism-related activities as recommended by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and direct the Finance Director to include $52,075 in a subsequent 2020 budget amendment from the Lodging Tax Reserve Fund. And I'll go back to the City Clerk for a roll call vote.
Starting with Council President Hunt.
Aye.
Deputy Council President Ray.
Aye.
Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. We will move on to the second item under regular business, which is the 2021 Lodging Tax Advisory Committee funding request. The action before council tonight is to approve, and this is the first time that this item has come to council. And I'd again like to invite Jen Davis-Hayes, Economic Development Manager, to make a presentation. Oh. Jen, we cannot hear you.
Oh, okay. That was great. I owe $1 or whatever it is.
Painful, painful.
Okay. I said all these amazing things. So thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for the previous vote. As Councilmember Goodman mentioned, there was a lot of thoughtful conversation. And I think, the LTAC did a great job about pivoting and then responding to the current situation. So again, you'll see some of the similar slides here. Tonight, this agenda bill looking at 2021 promotion and visitor attraction services. We did a request for proposals, and LTAC is recommending Visit Issaquah for your consideration and approval. Again, you'll see these are similar slides in the other presentation, but these are the members of the current LTAC committee. And again, we had this discussion about the actual budget and projected fund balance. So in discussing that, they did not want to continue to invest at the same level for tourism services, and so again decided to reduce the 2021 efforts in order to maintain some of those reserve funds, but still continue to do the work. And so the RFP that we did requested from qualified organizations or individuals, and we looked at these items. So looking at experience, approach, technique, as for their goals and metrics, how it addresses economic development, their visitor statistics, and their budget. We talked about things that again previously was looked at for these services. So recruitment of outside conferences and trade shows and events as safety allows, and coordinating with our hotels, attractions, and restaurants to create attractive packages and developing targeted promotions. And so that's just a few of the ideas that we looked at to provide some information for those who responded. We did receive 5 proposals, and I realize this may be confusing because the J-Ray and Velocity are actually 2 separate proposals, but this is the actual ranking of the proposals from the LTAC members. And again, we had a very thorough conversation going through each of the proposals. There was they ranked each proposal, all the members, and Visit Issaquah was the top ranked. Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce was a second, and Space Media was a third. J-Ray and Velocity are 2 marketing firms that are from outside the area, and they kind of tied in that 4th range there. So looking at Visit Issaquah's proposal, they talked about their experience, and so this information comes directly from their proposal, which is in the agenda packet. They talked about their board and their staff and the consultants that they have and have used for the past 2 years. Their approach is to promote Issaquah, the stories of people, and using assets like the demographic, psychographic, and geographic profiles. They're going to build upon what they've done already as a foundation and continue to use the tools that they have used to do their work to date. They're going to look at really promoting Issaquah lodging to drive more dollars to the lodging tax fund. And again, that's the intent for lodging tax dollars. And they had a long list of industry-specific goals and metrics that they could use. and we'll be gathering visitor statistics from several sources. So that could include some Expedia data, other booking information to really get to the crux of how many people did visit our area. And I think Beth in a previous presentation talked about the actual data they can get from credit cards and cell phones and all this kind of great stuff, so they can get that information. And in general, their budget covers personnel, contracted services, marketing, and events. So a quick look at the timeline. The RFP scope was finalized by the LTAC committee on September 1st. We had it proposal solicited through the 30th, and so we not only contacted those who were interested, who contacted us of interest, but also put it in the Daily Journal of Commerce, had it in our RFP bids project, our system. Then the proposals were reviewed prior to the LTAC committee meeting on the 14th, and again, they ranked them and had that discussion. Council decision, we're looking for one tonight, and if we get a decision tonight, we'll work with the selected provider to create the scope in November, December, but no services will begin for this contract until 2021. So again, looking at the selection for the 2021 Promotion and Visitor Attraction Services Provider, and LTAC's recommendation is Visit Issaquah.
Thank you for the presentation, Jen. I'll head back to the Council President to see if there was any public comment she would like to share that the Council received by email on this topic.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we received several emails on this topic from members of the community. We received 3 emails that were very similar, 2 of which indicated they were from local business owners. And these emails all spoke to the Chamber of Commerce as being a good choice for managing tourism, specifically the assets of having a large professional staff, ADA compliant building, locals that are familiar with the Chamber of Commerce, highway signs that point to the Chamber, and also salmon days and other things that the Chamber does. We also heard directly from the Chamber as well about the various ways that the Chamber promotes tourism, and as I indicated earlier, she also spoke directly to her comments to us. And then we heard from another member of the community that spoke to the Chamber as a trusted organization, has experience with salmon days, suggested that we might merge, or suggested that the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Issaquah might merge and work together, but did suggest that we let the Chamber manage tourism. And then lastly, we received a email in support of Visit Issaquah and urging us to not give up on Visit Issaquah and to support them and to allow them to continue their work, and spoke to the work that they've done, including the web presence and creating one voice. That concludes the comments on this topic.
Thank you, Council President. I see that Deputy Council President Ray has a question.
Hi, this is Chris Ray. Thank you, Mayor Pauley. Jen, have we notified the unsuccessful bidders that they were not selected to be the destination marketing organization for the city yet?
No, we have not.
So they haven't had a chance to either protest or in any other way complain about the procurement? Not suggesting that they would, but just giving them an opportunity before we finalize it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Jen, would that kind of information or activity happen in front of council or in front of LTAC? Council, a yes or no? Is council a yes or no on this expenditure? So if a vendor was to say that they wanted to provide additional information or contest it, would they do that before LTAC?
I believe so. I think there's, for any RFP process, there's some language in there. I don't have it in front of me that says that there's a process to do that. Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Not seeing any other questions. I'll give it a minute before we move on to a motion? Councilmember Goodman, a question.
Thank you. It's a procedural question. Apparently, there's a note in here from that there will be a motion to postpone. So I don't know what that motion is about, but maybe we could get some illumination on that so that we can get the clerk to tell us if we need a motion to approve the committee's recommendation first and then a postponement of or continuance or whatever we call it. I'm just curious about what the process is. Thank you.
Okay, I think that allows for council discussion then. City Clerk, I'm assuming that we would go with the main motion, and as the council deliberates, there may be a different motion introduced.
So there are actually two options with the motion to postpone. It could be offered at this point as the main motion to postpone the agenda bill to a future meeting date, or someone could make the motion to approve the request, and then someone could offer what we call a subsidiary motion to postpone. So it can be achieved either way.
Great. I do think we need to have some discussion. So whatever the council's preference is, I'll look to the LTAC chair. Were you going to do a main motion, which could be followed by a subsidiary motion?
Thank you, Mayor Polly. This is Councilmember Goodman. I think yes, and the reason is even though I understand a motion to postpone is coming, I think if we have a main motion, perhaps we can have a fuller conversation than if we only have a motion to postpone. That would be the reason I would bring the main motion. And again, understanding that there would be a motion to postpone. So.
Thank you. So would you care to make a motion?
I would, thank you. I would move to approve the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's request to appropriate $125,000 from the Lodging Tax Fund to the Destination Marketing Organization, Visit Issaquah, as proposed in the 2021 budget.
Deputy Council President Ray?
This is Chris Ray. I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded, so I will go to the motion maker to see if you have comments first, or the deputy, and otherwise I will start with Councilmember DeMichelle. So Councilmember Goodman, would you like to speak to this one?
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Councilmember Goodman here. Yes, just very briefly. I think Ms. Davis-Hayes did a pretty good job of summarizing. We did have a lengthy conversation about all of the applications and for different reasons that the two applications that from organizations that are not local fell to the bottom. Some of the members preferred local, and at least one of the members put them at the bottom for different reasons. One was because it looked like it was going to cost, that was actually me, cost more money. And one of them proposed that they would have a one-day trip to Issaquah to familiarize themselves with Issaquah, which I didn't think was sufficient. And then one was going to charge travel, and we had a $125,000 cap, so I didn't think that that was a good option. It was a 4-to-1 vote for the current recommendation, with the Kathy McCrory voting against, and the rest of us voting for the DMO Visit Issaquah. I'm trying to think of anything else. I think that was all that I had, and I will wait until later to make additional comments as a council member rather than just a maker of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Council President Ray, did you want to jump in, or should I move to Councilmember DeMichelle? Pretty sure he can hear me. Just can't hear him.
That's really bad.
I feel like he's writing me a note. Actually, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Even though
good.
your microphone shows that you're muted,
Oh, that's
we
good.
can't hear
Okay.
you. Okay.
No, I'll wait. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Sorry for the
thank
little
you.
dramatics there.
Councilmember DiMichele?
Oops. Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. I don't know why the mute symbol's still showing. We can absolutely hear you.
This is so weird. Okay. So I would like to move to postpone AB 8030 to the council meeting on November 2nd, 2020.
Okay. Okay. Is there,
I would second. The chat is also not working, evidently.
oh, interesting. Okay, then I am going to have to look for hand signals. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can you still hear me?
Oh my God.
Okay, don't know what this is. I just want to check in with the city clerk, and is this your expectation of how it would go with a subsidiary motion?
Yes, it is. And if I can comment, I appear to have been having some connection issues, which might have been what threw off the meeting just now. So my apologies for that inconvenience.
Awesome. Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to postpone. Councilmember DiMichele, would you like to speak to that?
Yes. Now can you hear
There
me?
we go. Yes,
Okay.
we can. Thank you.
Sure that we're doing it okay. Yes, I would like to postpone because I have some deep concerns about this proposal. As noted earlier, the first concern is that we don't have a financial report that was provided during the previous presentation, so we don't have an accounting of how previously allocated funds were spent. Two, I would like more information about the process, specifically the transparency of the process, the appearance of fairness in the process, especially noting that members of the LTAC board are also members of the Visit Issaquah board and also representing the chamber. We received several persuasive, to me, emails from members of the business community with concerns about duplication of services already provided by the Chamber of Commerce. And I didn't see anything in the application that was submitted that differentiated between those services already provided and those that would be provided under this funding. And then finally, on the issue of goals and metrics, I only saw in the application a series of possible goals, and I didn't see any metrics. And I think without those two things, we really don't have a plan in front of us. And so without a financial report and without proposed metrics, I can't vote to accept this recommendation. So rather than just voting against it this evening, I'd prefer that this matter be postponed until the November 2nd meeting so that we can have a response from the LTAC board and further discussion with a lot more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Hunt?
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. I have similar concerns to Councilmember DiMichele. I specifically am interested in better understanding the operations of Visit Issaquah from the perspective of if the board meetings could be public, for instance, and also if a city representative could be on the board and if they might consider those things. I think it would also be helpful to have the financials. And the other thing, as was mentioned, we did receive a number of emails about duplication of efforts. And one thing that was pointed out in several of the emails was the Visitor Information Center ADA compliance. And I think that that is interesting. It's a physical location that's ADA accessible in the one case, and that doesn't appear to be an amenity provided. So I was interested in the suggestions around merging the chamber, or at the very least understanding how those services could be complementary, but would at this time, support the motion to postpone so that we could get more information on these various questions.
Thank you. Are there additional comments on the motion that's on the table? Deputy Council President Ray?
Thank you, Mayor Pauley. This is Chris Ray. This really isn't a comment so much as it's a question about the motion. And I wonder if we could have a brief discussion about what additional information we would want so that we can make a better informed decision when we bring it back. So, I mean, I heard a couple things, but I think if we're going to postpone, I'd like to know what it is we're postponing so that we will have. I mean, so we have financial statements from Visit Issaquah. Wasn't sure what else was on that list.
Thank you very much, Deputy Council President Ray. I can have Jen, after all of the questions are out on the table, and we may hear that there's other council members that are interested in different information, I'll have Jen summarize it back, what she's heard. So you can make sure it's the list that you want.
It's a list. Thank you.
The list. Any other questions? I see that Councilmember Goodman is up again, but deferring to see if anybody who hasn't spoken would like to speak. It looks like you're up, Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodman here. So I did hear mention of something about LTAC. We need to, I'm not sure what LTAC's role is unless it gets voted down or changed and gone back to LTAC. So
clarification on the role.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what the proposal is for involving LTAC.
Let's go to Jen for a question and see maybe the council's role in this would be, and oh, it looks like our administrator has a comment. Mr. Bobkowitz.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I think at this point the issue is before the council, so if there are questions that need to be answered, your staff can do that unless LTAC feels that they would like to reconvene. I agree with Councilmember Goodman. I think they have done their job in transmitting the information to the council, and your staff would be happy to follow up and get whatever answers you need for November 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Bobkowitz. Jen, I'm going to come back to you then. I'm not saying that anybody else has a question. Could you go over what additional information you have listed that council's requesting?
Yes. So I heard twice financial reports looking at the funds for 2019 or 2020, sorry, and more information about the process. And we can actually address that now if we'd like, but about the transparency of the process due to the way that LTAC is set up with having members of other organizations that applied for it on the board. And more information about the goals and metrics. One of the things we plan to do is to come back with the contract, which would have to be approved by the council. So we were going to develop those, fine-tune those goals and metrics for the then. You can let me know with further information about how much of that goals and metrics you'd like to see by the 2nd. And then I heard a request to open up their board meetings to the public and consider a city representative on the board. Was there anything I missed?
If you want to indicate in chat if there's additional information that you request. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman here. Opening the board to the public, and I think I heard a suggestion for a city elected or staff on the board, if I'm mistaken. Is that right? Okay. So I guess my question as a council member, not an LTAC chair, is, the city provides money to other organizations that have boards. So is a similar request, does that mean that the city, every time the city gives money to an organization, then is the council going to want those board meetings to be public? And have a city person on the board, a city staff or city council member on the board? They're just questions. So I think that's one thing to consider. with those questions is how do we play with others with that request?
Thank you. I did think that I thought Councilmember DiMichele was indicating that she had wanted to talk. Were you in line?
My chat is not working, and so I'm
Okay,
putting
but you did put your hand up, so.
Yeah, and I am quite fine with following Councilmember Ray and then following him.
Okay.
That's just fine. But I just wanted to note that I can't put anything in the chat anymore.
Very strange. Okay, thank you. If you just raise your hand, I'll catch you. Council President Hunt, followed by Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you, Council President Hunt. So in response to Councilmember Goodman's clarifying questions, I think that there were a lot of questions raised about, in particular, duplication of efforts and duplication of services, the website, calendars, et cetera. And so my ask is really about how we might have more transparency into this organization and what they're doing to support tourism. And so these are considerations that they may have other ideas, but those are specific considerations regarding how we might have transparency, and through that might better understand the process and then better understand these duplication concerns. And then it's not specific to anything other than the matter at hand. So no, I would not extrapolate to other businesses at all or other organizations.
Did you have a couple of questions, Councilmember Goodman, or is that a? Okay, thank you. Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. This is Chris Ray. This is really hard. When we first started talking about formation of the DMO way back in the day, one of the things that we lobbied for was that this was going to be a significant organization to the city because it was going to represent all sorts of different interests. And we had suggested, I thought required, that there be a city representative on their board for visibility and coordination. So that didn't happen. But as I look at it, and I look at this particular procurement that we've gone through, and we wouldn't ask Space Media to put a person on their board. And as best I can tell, because I just looked it up, the chamber doesn't have a city person on their board either. So, I mean, I think Councilmember Walsh is saying that we do.
Well, Councilmember Walsh attends their meeting as a city representative, but she is not on their board.
Yeah, so that's what I was, not a voting member on their board. So we have some visibility, but we don't have that same level of control that we'd be asking for. And then from financials, I mean, I kind of am aligned with the city administrator. Look, this is an LTAC responsibility. They went through a process. Unless we want to throw out their whole process and say, start over again, which I guess is an option. I'm okay with that, but I think this is their decision to make. And I don't know that if I see Visit Issaquah's financials, I'm going to feel any more or less comfortable. So I'd rather just move forward with this, and let's get this done tonight.
Is there any other comments on the subsidiary motion? Councilmember DiMichele?
All right, I just want to make sure you can hear me. I certainly did not take this action lightly. I always want to honor the work that's been done by boards and commissions. Having been a commission member myself for a long time, I know how important that is. I know the hard work that's done. This particular proposal that's coming before us has raised numerous red flags for me, and we, as a council, we act as the final gate, and we have a role. Otherwise, why bring it to us? And so I think in this particular case, there are just a number of questions that need to be answered before we move forward, before I can be comfortable moving forward to approve this proposal. I would, in addition to the things that have already been mentioned, I would like to see and it doesn't have to be terrifically detailed, but I would like to see a strategic, some strategic planning around introducing tourism back into Issaquah in the wake of COVID. Another thing that I noticed about the application is it doesn't address the impacts of COVID-19, and I would think that that would be the most significant thing that the application should address. So there are just a lot of issues that I have with this presentation. Again, I didn't take this action lightly. I think that there are significant things we need to hear back before we approve this.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Polly. This is Councilmember Zach Hall. A quick question and a comment. The first question is, when was Visit Issaquah established?
Jen?
In 2018.
I will say that I share a lot of concerns that have been emailed us about duplication of efforts, but I guess I'm just genuinely in a place where I feel like we haven't given them enough time to be able to give us a product that we think rises to the level where every year we just want to re-up it because we're comfortable with it. So I'm not sure I quite know where I'm at on delaying it, but I am concerned with not putting our support behind Visit Issaquah only after 2 years into the process. So that's where those are my comments for right now.
Councilmember Goodman?
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman here. That was one of the, thank you, Councilmember Hall. I wanted to remind everybody that it's really only been the second full year, and most of this year has been taken up by the pandemic. So I'm not sure Visit Issaquah has had a fair opportunity to get going. And then, I had one other thing and I forgot what I was going to, all of the, I think it's important for the council and the public to know that all of the comment that we have received, and it's not been a landslide, I mean, it's, maybe half a dozen at the most, that we've received at the council level regarding this agenda bill has been since LTAC met. LTAC received no public comment. There was a letter that was submitted before the LTAC meeting. It was addressed to the council with one LTAC member copied. I did share that with LTAC, but all of this information has come since the LTAC meeting. And I just think everybody ought to know that, just in case there was any idea that LTAC didn't address or ignored the issues that were in the communications that have been since received by the council. That's not the case. LTAC did not receive any of the public comment. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, just checking because my headset died. Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. We have a question from Councilmember Walsh, followed by a comment from Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you. This is Councilmember Walsh. Just checking in on this idea of postponement. What timeline are we looking at for being, I know we obviously haven't been able to ask for the information, so it would be a loose idea of when it could come back, but do we see any negative impacts of that on making this decision?
City Administrator Bobkowitz?
No, as Mr. Davis Hayes said, this will be for the year beginning January 1, so there certainly is time.
Deputy Council President Ray?
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Chris Ray. Just want to clarify, the comments or discussion right now isn't on whether or not to approve the motion to fund the DMO. The question now is whether or not we want to defer making that decision. So I think the comments are really cogent, but I really would like us to focus on whether or not we're going to make that decision tonight or at some future date.
Correct. So if there are any other comments on the motion to postpone AB 8030 to the council meeting on November 2nd, I'll look in the chat box, and otherwise I'll call for the vote. Okay. So the motion on the floor is to postpone AB 8030 to the council meeting on November 2nd, 2020, and I'll get the city clerk to do a roll call vote.
Starting with Deputy Council President Ray,
No.
Councilmember Walsh,
Aye.
Councilmember DeMichelle,
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman,
Nay.
Councilmember Hall,
Nay.
Council President Hunt.
Aye.
That is a tie with 3 ayes and 3 nays that the mayor could choose to break.
Thank you, City Clerk. So there are certain occasions, if it doesn't involve an ordinance or, I can't remember what they are, but our attorney can tell you that the mayor actually can break a tie. I choose not to break the tie, so that means the motion goes down, and we are
That's
back
correct.
to comments or questions on the main motion. And I wonder, City Clerk, if you could put the main motion back up into the chat, that'd be helpful. And I will be looking for comments on the main motion. Councilmember Goodman, followed by Council President Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Goodman here. I supported the and ranked the Visit Issaquah at the highest for a couple of reasons. After reviewing the application and knowing the circumstances, as mentioned before, this is a brand new organization. They haven't had an opportunity to fully get going, and especially with the pandemic. And the council just approved the destination marketing organization in 2018 or shortly before that. So I think we owe it to the organization to continue. I don't see any reason, even though there were excellent applications, and I know we have had comments encouraging us to make a different decision. I don't see any reason to pound away at this right now or blow things up right now. Not sure that this is the thing that we want to focus on in the middle of a pandemic. I think the DMO is working just as hard as it can on tourism and marketing. And again, I didn't see a reason to make a different choice at this time, given all of the circumstances. In terms of the process and the transparency, the reason that, and when we had this conversation with the LTAC board, had this conversation in the summer, early in the summer, we met for the first time. The membership of the LTAC committee is required and dictated by state law. And so if it looks a little strange that there are appearance of fairness issues, that's because it is what it is. The people who are on the committee are the people who who are part of organizations that assess the tax, organizations that receive the tax, receive the funding, and then we have to have somebody from a council member, and that council member has to be the chair. It's not they voted me in, and it's not that I argued or lobbied for it. It has to be, our council member has to be a chair. So there is no appearance of fairness issue. The process has been fully explained. We each had we had a list of things that we agreed would be the standards by which we would judge the applications, which we did. 40% experience, 40% responsiveness to the RFP, and 20% competitiveness of the fee structure. If there are goals and metrics that are an issue, you heard Ms. Davis-Hayes talk about that being part of the contract. And the the strategic planning, perhaps that's something that could work on with the organization, or that we could ask the DMO organization to work on with the administration, so that also is in part of their contract. And as far as the financial report goes, I can't imagine that that's complicated, and we could just potentially just ask for that information. So I'm going to be voting to support it for those reasons, and I hope that you will do that as well and give the organization an opportunity to do the work that it's been trying to do over the past year or 2 years, but really hasn't been able to fully implement because of the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. Council President Hunt next.
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. I do look forward to seeing, should this pass, I do look forward to seeing details in the contract about metrics. I think that's very important. And I had hoped to get more information before we had this decision this evening. I think that there are a lot of areas where the chamber, as was indicated in these comments that we received, the chamber is well known to the community, does have relationships with the community, and with the tourists promoting businesses in the community. And so I think there is a overlap in the services that they provide between the chamber and Visit Issaquah, and I hope that there's a way that that can be complementary in the future. And I have concerns about going forward at this point without more information about Visit Issaquah and how it is complementary at this time.
Thank you. Deputy Council President Ray.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. This is Chris Ray. Couple thoughts on this one. I'm going to support or echo what Councilmember Hall said, which is this organization really didn't get started until 2019. So it's really about a year and a half old. And I think it's fair to give the organization a chance to demonstrate that it is of value or not of value. So I think that this makes sense. What I think is probably more important, and really is the question that we should be wrestling, is the larger question about how do we synchronize all of these business development activities across the city? How do we get our destination marketing and our downtown association and our Chamber of Commerce to focus on a single unifying set of goals? So what I would like to do is to move forward with this particular initiative, because I think it is only fair to give it a chance to thrive, and we made the commitment to it in 2018. But I want to come back to this larger issue about, well, how are we doing this, and what is the way to do this, and how do we leverage the resources that we have? And it's all of the things that we're talking about, but I'd rather talk about them in the context of economic development than in the context of a destination marketing organization.
Thank you, Deputy Council President Ray. And I'll just add in a piece about our Issaquah Recovery Task Force and how we want to have a COVID recovery plan for various segments of our community. And definitely the growth of our local economy and tourism again is one of those. And so I'm assuming as we bring in our regular boards and commissions to take up those pieces, we'll end up cobbling together a comprehensive COVID recovery plan. So I hope we get you to where you need to be. I'm not seeing any other comments in the box right now. Is there anyone else who would like to make some final comments before I read the motion? Okay, seeing none. The motion on the table is to approve the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's request to appropriate $125,000 from the Lodging Tax Fund to the Destination Marketing Organization, Visit Issaquah, as proposed in the 2021 budget. And I will go to the City Clerk for a roll call vote.
Starting with Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Nay.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Council President Hunt.
Nay.
Deputy Council President Ray.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, 2 nays.
Thank you. So the motion is approved, just scrolling through here, and passes 4-2. The next agenda item this evening, or the last one on regular business, is AB 8028, proposed 2021 budget, amending community planning and development fees. And this item was last before council at the June 23rd council study session, and the action this evening is just to forward this into the budget process. I'd like to invite Management Analyst Jean Paul to introduce this item. Jean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, members of the council. As the mayor indicated, I'm Jean Paul, the management analyst from the executive office, and I'll be presenting tonight on the amending CPD fees. While they won't be presenting, the consultants from the FCS group who assisted on this project, Martin Shaw and Matthew Hobson, are also with us tonight and available to answer questions about their work. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide the City Council an update on the administration's recommended adjustments to CPD fees and receive feedback. As both Director Goldberg and the Mayor have indicated, the actual adoption of these fees is scheduled to occur with the 2021 budget on November 16th. As background, cost recovery for CPD was last studied in 2016 by the FCS group using data from 2015. The City Council acted in January of 2017 to update the fee schedule and set an 80% cost recovery target. This year, the administration examined cost recovery again as part of the citywide services assessment. The first update on this was provided at the June 23rd study session. Here's the high-level summary of cost recovery shown at the June study session. As you can see, both revenues declined and expenditures increased each year, which caused cost recovery to decrease below the 80% target in 2019. In addition to providing this historical cost recovery, the administration sought City Council direction on the cost recovery target. And at that time, the City Council did not express a desire to change the 80% target. Because of the declining cost recovery, the administration examined a number of measures that could help restore the desired 80% as part of the 2021 proposed budget. New and adjusted fees were one of these measures. For the fee recommendations themselves, a staff working group developed these proposed changes. First, that group identified areas where adjustments were needed. These included permits where staff spend a considerable amount of time with little or no revenue connection, and it also included a significant realignment of fees for site work and engineering permitting. After generating these recommendations, the administration contracted with the FCS group to verify that the changes would achieve the desired cost recovery. The FCS group consultants did this by examining the past 5 years of permitting data and creating a projection for the next 5 years. They then used this projection with the recommended fee changes to create a revenue forecast. In that forecast, which I'll show in greater detail on the next slide, CPD's cost recovery is expected to remain above 80% for the next 5 years. After confirming the adjusted fees achieved cost recovery, the administration conducted outreach with stakeholders and further refined the fees before arriving at the final recommendations. Here's the projected cost recovery over the next 5 years. The increase in the first 2 years is the result of several large, one-time development projects generating higher revenues. In 2023 and beyond, the projection shows that the fees continue to recover at least 80%, even in a relatively normal year that does not have large one-time boosts to revenue. In summary, the recommended fee adjustments will generate an estimated $1.36 million in 2021. This is $250,000 more than was estimated as part of the proposed budget. In total, over 50 changes are being recommended. These range from brand new fees or new fee models, adjustment for existing fees, or simple code improvements that do not affect revenues. Over the course of the next slides, I'll cover these significant adjustments. The first recommendation and the largest change would be to the site work fee, which includes the review and inspection of clearing and grading. Currently,
These fees are based upon the number of units in residential construction or the square footage of commercial construction. There are two issues with this fee structure. First, the terrain at a project really dictates the site work required, and there may not be a direct connection between the building size and how complex that site work is. Second, the fee structure has historically not generated enough revenues to meet cost recovery. Instead of simply increasing the fees using the same inputs, the administration recommends a new model based on the City of Renton. In this model, an applicant pays a fee based on the parcel size being graded and the value of ground improvements. Renton obviously provides the best comparison for these new fees. That city has a few more tiers to how it differentiates the size of projects, but a relatively straightforward new single-family project would cost $7,500 in Renton, but $7,000 in Issaquah. Overall, this change will generate an estimated $1.1 million of revenue. That is approximately $550,000 more than the projected revenues under the current fee model. The next recommendation is a new fee for consultant administration. First, the administration is recommending moving away from expedited review, where applicants pay for consultant review and a reduced time to permit approval. There currently exists a $5,000 fee for the administration of those reviews. That fee would go away, but as consultant expertise will still be necessary, the administration is recommending a new fee equal to the consultant fee, but not to exceed $2,000. This fee would cover the costs of staff reviewing and integrating consultant work with other staff comments, but would not result in faster review. The $3,000 reduction from the current fee is a better alignment with the staffing time spent on this task. Overall, this fee will generate an estimated $85,000 annually. The next fee recommendation addresses additional reviews. Currently, one fee covers as many review cycles as needed for land use planning or engineering. We are recommending a fee that is 30% of the initial permit fee for each review beyond the third review. As you can see from the slide, this is a common practice with slight variations based on how cities charge this fee, but our recommendation compares easily to both Bothell and Renton. This new fee is estimated to generate $15,000 annually. The next new fee recommendation is land use review of building permits. Currently, land use review occurs on building permits that don't also require a land use permit. For example, a new single-family construction project may only require a building permit, but a CPD planner will still review the project for land use components such as setbacks and building heights. The administration is recommending a $500 fee for 1- and 2-family dwellings and a $1,000 fee for new commercial or multifamily construction. Bothell is the only city that assesses a separate land use planning fee at $167 for single family and $334 per building of commercial or multifamily construction. Overall, this fee is estimated to generate $62,500.
Jean, before you move on to another slide, I believe Councilmember Walsh has a question, and I'm just going to join Councilmember DeMichelle in having a non-functioning chat. I can see, but I can't answer. So there you go.
Thank you. This is Councilmember Walsh. I was able to fix my chat by being able to select the drop-down button to set it to everyone, just in case that helps anyone else. Jean, could you go back to the previous slide? Thank you. When I brought up the permit fees to the chamber, there were several concerns, one of which was the fact that many reviews go into a third, fourth, fifth, I even heard seventh review cycle. And so they were concerned about the idea of additional cost happening if there were reviews beyond the third review, and how they have kind of a lack of control over that idea. I'm wondering if Director Niven could speak to that idea and the general sense of nobody wants to get to third review. How can we avoid that and also avoid a penalty for a party that may not have full control over the situation.
Good evening, City Council. Keith Niven, Director of Community Planning and Development. So this is a hard one. What happens is that generates that need for multiple reviews is sometimes a fault of city staff, because maybe they did a partial review and they don't generate full comments until the second or third review. But a lot of times what happens is it's not uncommon for city staff to generate pages of correction comments off the first review and the second review. And it's not uncommon that applicants, in their rush to resubmit applications, don't respond to all those comments. And so by doing this, there's a responsibility put on city staff to make sure that each review is complete, to ensure that if we do get to the second or third review, that it's because the applicant has either modified their project or has not been responsive to city comments, and not because city staff have not provided a full set of comments for each review. So that there is a burden put on us by enacting this fee, and that's one of the reasons why I like it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Walsh. Councilmember Hall, you have a question?
I do, Mayor Pauly, thank you. Councilmember Zach Hall here. First, Director Niven, love your background. It looks like it might be Amsterdam. Feel free, if this will come later in the presentation, feel free to just wait to answer this. This is just another one of those you don't know what you don't know, but how does this impact ADU permitting? You were talking a little earlier about moving away from expedited review, and this might be another question as well. I thought we had something on the books that we have expedited review of ADU development. I guess that would be my first question, and the second question is, how does this impact ADU permitting? Accessory dwelling unit for the community. Sorry about that.
I think there were about 4 questions bundled in that, Councilmember Hall. So let me try and do this. So accessory dwelling units receive priority review, and the distinction here is what the department offered was what was called expedited review, which meant that an applicant could choose to pay for consultants to completely review their permits. Well, the problem with that is ultimately it does connect in with staff, in that staff are coordinating consultants, and because our stormwater expert is a staff member, we'd have staffs trying to run at the speed of our consultants, and ultimately it was causing a lot of friction within the department. So we've decided to stop offering that basically fast lane, pay to go faster, because I think we've got a lot to fix just under normal speed. So we're getting rid of the expedited as an option for now. But as far as, say, accessory dwelling units, or I could add schools, we have a number of things that are identified as priority reviews within City Code. And what that means is that we will process those permits faster than other permits that are in the queue. So that's some management on our part to make sure that that does happen. And so hopefully I got to most of your questions, and if I missed any, please let me know.
Councilmember Hall?
No, I think that was clear. I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Oh, and it's Copenhagen, by the way.
Oh, so close. So
Thank you, Director Niven. Jean, do you want to carry on with the presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mary. So the next new fee recommendation is for a temporary certificate of occupancy, or TCO. The building official is currently authorized to issue a TCO for a project when construction is substantially complete, but minor items like landscaping remain. There's currently no fee for this. TCOs are a beneficial practice, but they do create additional inspections and require processing both the TCO and the original permit in parallel. To recover the cost for this staff time, the administration is recommending a $500 fee for a 60-day TCO for 1 and 2 family projects. That TCO can be renewed at the same cost for another 60 days. A TCO for a commercial or multifamily project would cost $3,500 for 180 days and $750 for renewal. In terms of comparisons, Mercer Island charges $560 for a single-family TCO and $5,038 for commercial and multifamily projects. In total, this fee would generate an estimated $90,000. A street cut fee is the final recommended new fee. While many factors impact the condition of a road, cutting into it to access utility components underneath can seriously affect service life. To help recoup the repair costs, the administration is recommending a fee based on the square footage of the cut in a road. This fee would also double when the Pavement Condition Index, or PCI, is greater than 90. As you can see from the slide, Kirkland, Bellevue, Redmond, and Bothell all have versions of this fee. The costs of a 20 square foot and 200 square foot cut are shown for comparison. And the revenues from this fee, which are estimated at $75,000, would go to the street operating fund to support street maintenance. The next recommendations are not new, but adjustments to existing fees. Currently, an applicant pays $300 for a traffic control plan review, which evaluates how traffic will flow when work will be conducted in the city's right-of-way. The second fee of $1,150 for street use is required for use of the right-of-way. The administration is recommending increasing these to $2,000 and $2,500 respectively. This reflects the increased staff time spent problem-solving with applicants to minimize impacts rather than simply providing a safety review. Adjusting these fees would generate an estimated $230,000 in traffic control plan revenues and $70,000 in street use revenues. In addition to fee adjustments, the administration is recommending improvements to the code. First, content that was previously in footnotes was brought into the main body to make it easier to find. Second, some fees that historically could be performed by either staff or consultants have been adjusted to only being performed by consultants to match current procedures. Finally, the registered plan program in Chapter 16 will be removed. This program allowed for expedited review for plans that remained unchanged for multiple homes in a subdivision. As most of the flat areas where subdivisions could utilize this feature of the code are built out, the registered plan program is now outdated. The administration does expect further updates and code improvements to Title 16 in the first quarter of 2021.
Thank you, Jean. I think you're getting close to done, but it does look like Councilmember Walsh has a question. How many more slides do you have to go?
I believe there's 2.
Councilmember Walsh, do you want to jump in now with your question? And I can't see you. Oh, you wait? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jean.
Here's a summary of how these recommendations affect a sample of projects. For a single-family interior remodel or a commercial tenant improvement, there are no changes to fees from 2020 to 2021. A single-family new construction project would increase by $6,000 with these new fees. This would include $500 for the land use review of building permits and a $5,500 change in site work costs. In terms of timing and next steps, the administration is recommending adoption of this ordinance with the budget, and new fees would go into effect on January 1, 2021. To set up adoption with the budget, the City Council may forward the agenda bill to the November 16th meeting or refer to another meeting prior. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jane. Councilmember Walsh, would you like to start off the, actually, hang on one second. Do you mind, Councilmember Walsh, if I go to Councilmember Hunt first, see if there's any?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks. Okay, Council President Hunt, did the council receive any public comments on this item?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we did. We received a letter from the Master Builders Association and expressing concern about the fee increases, concerned about discouraging future development and worsening our housing supply shortage. And we also received comments from the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce concerned about the comparisons, that the comparisons were not, the comparisons to other cities were not similar cities, and then also concerned about the effect this might have on affordable housing stock in our city. That concludes the summary of comments.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. This is Councilmember Walsh. I was looking to talk about the street cut fees. So first, I love that we're including something like this as a new fee, that because this is ultimately a cost to the taxpayers, us having to repave streets or deal with streets that have been cut into. But I was kind of surprised that the proposed fees are, I mean, less than it looks like it could be compared to other cities. And so I'm wondering if there are any comments about how our proposed fees were chosen.
Thanks. Jean, did you want to take that question or refer it to someone else on the team?
I can take first crack at it, and then either Deputy Administrator Andrea Snyder or potentially Director Keith Nevin might be able to also provide comment. But essentially, Bennett Ashbaugh, who's the manager for most of the pavement management type projects and endeavors in the city, did some background research, and he's the one who generated that recommendation. In terms of how he landed on those numbers, I don't have more information. So if either Andrea or Keith have more information, they could hop in and answer that.
Great.
Good evening, members of City Council. Good evening, Madam Mayor. This is Deputy City Administrator Andrea Snyder. And I believe that one of the things that we looked at when setting those fees were other fees that we charge when utilities do go into the right-of-way. I think there are other permitting fees that are involved. So we wanted to be able to balance the fees that we charge versus other cities. Of course, I think you'll hear us say time and time again that there are no great apples-to-apples comparisons when it comes from one city to another in terms of what fee they charge and exactly what that fee covers for that city. Very rare to get a full comparison because every city is a little bit different. So we wanted to be able to balance out those fees with the other fees that we charge that may pertain to the use of the city's right-of-way for that purpose.
Councilmember Walsh, do you have a follow-up?
I appreciate the analysis, and I guess I would just say that I feel like maybe we should give our roads and the taxpayers' money the respect that it deserves, and maybe look at charging a higher fee there, would be my thought process.
Thank you, Councilmember Walsh. I am not seeing anybody else signed up for questions at this time or comments. Remembering that the action is to move this one forward to November 16th. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, do I have somebody prepared to? Oh, there we go. Councilmember Hall has a question.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. This is Councilmember Zach Hall. I guess my only question would be, have we run this through the lens of our desire to support affordable housing and what this would do, and who we've talked to or what discussions we've had about that internally? Or maybe that's something we can do before now in the next meeting. But I would just be interested in what city administration thinks about that generally.
Deputy City Administrator Snyder, do you have some comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do waive certain fees for affordable housing development. So for those fees that would apply, they would already be waived.
Does that help, Councilmember Hall?
It's a good point. Yes, thank you very much.
Awesome, good question. Is there anyone prepared to make a motion? Council President Hunt?
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. I move to forward AB 8028 to the November 16th, 2020 council meeting for deliberation and action.
Great. Deputy Council President Ray?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? And I'll leave it open for a few seconds to give people an opportunity to be in the chat. Council President Hunt?
Thank you. This is Council President Hunt. I would also be interested when this returns to know if any of these would be expected to affect affordable housing. I think both, the informal affordable housing as well as formal, to the extent possible, just to know how this might affect that. And that would be information that would be good to have before we make a decision on November 16th. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Walsh?
Thank you. This is Councilmember Walsh. I just wanted to say I appreciate the administration being creative about revenue and also being responsive to our policy of having an 80% cost recovery so that, our lower income households are not paying more in taxes to support developers building something that's ultimately going to create them revenue and having us subsidize that to a certain extent by having our CPD department pay for that in tax dollars. So I very much appreciate the responsiveness of this and the respect of our taxpayers in making sure that we have a cost recovery target and that our fees reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Walsh. I am not seeing anybody else in the chat box at this moment. I'll give it a second. If there is no further discussion, the motion before the council is to forward AB 8028 to the November 16th, 2020 council meeting for deliberation and action. And City Clerk, can you do the roll call vote?
Yes, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. My headset also died. All right, Councilmember DiMichele.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
Aye.
Council President Hunt.
Aye.
Deputy Council President Ray.
Aye.
Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. That passes 6-0. And we are working our way through the regular business, and now we're at the good of the order on our agenda. Do any council members have something for good of the order? And would you please indicate so in the chat, and I'll call upon you. Okay, while I am waiting, because I'm not seeing any, I will go through some upcoming council meetings. The following meetings will be held virtually. There is a City Council special meeting on Monday, October 26th at 7 p.m., establishment of the Environmental Board. There is a City Council study session on Tuesday, October 27th at 6:30 p.m., which is going to be on the 2021 proposed budget. And the City Council regular meeting on Monday, November 2nd, with potential agenda items including the proposed 2021 budget, levy and revenue sources, housing stability, local defense against evictions, and contract for mediation services. Next, as I said earlier, the executive session was held prior to the meeting, so there is no executive session being held at this time. And there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 10:25. Have a great night.